you're in my personal space telling me, and by the way, I don't like people being in my personal space. It's a real serious issue. If you're an attorney, you got to recognize I was not always an attorney. So you get in my personal space, we're going to have a problem. But generally speaking, except Glenn Lerner, because you look like a... No, I'm joking now. So, but the thing of it is, I don't appreciate people getting in my face and telling me like all these different things as though they know exactly what the heck's going on. I mean, it's back off. You're a lawyer. You're supposed to advocate for your client, but there's a place to do that. When people meet with me in this office, I'm not throwing out a whole bunch of fancy legal words. I can speak in very fancy legal words because I have to when I'm in a very fancy legal courtroom or forum of any kind. But I don't do that with my clients. I speak the way I'm speaking right now because, it's not going to benefit my clients me speaking over their head or about, using terms that they don't even know what the heck I'm actually referring to.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Consciously Curious, where we chat with those that are cultivating their passion. I know it's been a minute. I haven't done one since November. I think it was last November, actually. But today we are in Homewood, Illinois, and we have the great pleasure with Mr. David McDermott.
How are you?
Hey, we're at McDermott Law Group.
We are. On a
AKA
Saturday.
Not your typical attorney.
There we go.
It's a gloomy Saturday, but hey, we're not complaining.
No, not at all. We're inside. So... I think we'd have more to complain about, actually, if it was beautiful outside right now. We're sitting in here like, gosh. And you guys don't see this, but all the equipment that this guy has to set up for this.
It took a hot second.
For this, it takes a little bit. So anyway, yeah. So
okay.
What's going on?
Well, Dave, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
I want to just open up by kind of sharing what the pandemic has been like for you. Has it affected you in any way?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's so I'm a very hands-on, I like to interact with people in person type individual. So from that perspective, it's had a tremendous impact on this business. I mean, everything from the initial meetings with clients, which are done by phone or by Zoom. Yeah. There are a lot of attorneys that take consultations over the phone. I don't do it. We give free consultations, but I want people to come to the office because I want to be able to meet with them. I want to be able to, interact with them in person, be able to communicate with them in person because you get a far better idea of what you're getting into as an attorney, and they get a far better idea of what they're getting into as a client, meeting in person. So that's been affected. Preparation for these cases because a lot of these cases, people would rather talk about, what occurred over the phone or what's going on over the phone. That obviously that is a bit of a hindrance. Discovery, which is all that material, all that evidence, documentation that's exchanged between sides. You want to be able to do that in person to an extent. And a lot of times people are asking, hey, would you mind, mailing certain discovery? We can't mail discovery on criminal matters, but on civil matters, usually we can. But still, that's a bit of a hindrance. And then the overall trial process. Yeah. We are right next to a police station and fire department, so we're going to have some...
Shout out Homewood Fire Department.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, the hearings and the trials, that's significantly affected. And I'm not going to bore you with different, various different specifics, but I'll share something. So, for example, in criminal defense matters, you've got individuals who, given the nature of the charges, they are denied bond or they're given very high bonds. And we're in a system, obviously, where you're supposed to be innocent until proven otherwise. But you get all these allegations. The judge hears all these allegations during the course of a bond hearing and makes a determination. Oh my gosh, these allegations are horrible. I've got to make sure the bond is really high for this individual. Make sure he or she, has to post a substantial amount of money if in fact they're able to get out. Or alternatively, I'm going to deny bond, which, typically we have different ways of arguing against that, be able to go ahead and potentially reduce the bond or something along those lines. But what you have to understand with the pandemic and the significance of the pandemic and how it affects these cases is when you're holding somebody in custody. First off, the Cook County Jail, I'm pretty sure I read some article on the fact that it was the largest confined spreader, of the coronavirus. So you've got all these people that are locked up, and you have, certainly this is one of the more significant things from a criminal defense attorney perspective. You get these people that are locked up that the judges, are putting in this box more or less, and it's spreading all over. I mean, their inmates have not inmates, detainees have died, and correctional officers over there have died from the virus. And
Did they not get
sent
out when they had respiratory symptoms, or?
They're not. So it's not the typical checks and balances system that you would think it would be in multiple other areas of life. This is the jail. So a lot of times
I've
they're not
taken
really.
inmates from the jail.
What's that?
I've taken inmates from the jail.
Well, then
as a medic, yeah.
Then you have an understanding of the significance of that.
Yeah.
But they're not going through and going through and saying, there's not some sort of intake form that says, okay, what's your what are your prior health issues, and so but what I was going to say is it's actually twofold. So you've got the bond issues in the very beginning, and that's an issue. But you also have something called the Speedy Trial Act, which says, once you demand trial, they have to try your case within 120 days if you're locked up, within 160 days if you're out on bond. And this is for Illinois cases. It varies from state to state, and the name of it varies from state to state. But they have to go ahead and go forward to trial within this time. And there's a moratorium. There's a stop on this requirement, on this very important right that you have as an accused that's locked up, or as an accused that's out on bond, to be able to make sure that the state has to proceed with their case within so much time. And the courts are like, hey, right now we're not going to enforce this. So you've got all these people that are locked up
longer than
that can't. Yes, so they don't have there's nothing forcing the prosecution, and understandably so to an extent with respect to the prosecution. But it's not understandable with respect to the accused that's sitting in jail, that can't afford bond, or that is being denied bond based on allegations that haven't been proven, and in the middle of a pandemic where it's spreading very quickly in that jail.
So what happens? Do they get let out, or they're sitting there?
They're sitting there
if it's
longer.
Longer than 160.
If it's 120 when you're locked up, and it's longer than the 120, and they're not doing anything to they weren't doing anything to address this issue. I mean, they said, sorry, we're trying to do everything that we possibly can, and I get the balancing act of trying to figure out all these different things for the very first time, and I get the fact that even judges are trying to figure out Zoom, and the sheriffs are supposed to figure out. Everybody's supposed to automatically overnight have some sort of understanding of how these different softwares, these different sites work.
Yeah.
And I get it from that perspective, that there's a lot of new technology and that they're trying to do as best as they possibly can with the technology and with the circumstances. I understand that from that perspective. What I don't understand is the perspective of the accused, who, again, we're in a system where you're supposed to be innocent until proven otherwise. Yeah. And as an accused, you're sitting locked in a jail where this virus is running rampant, and there's no way to address that. And when we brought countless motions to reconsider bond, and we were successful on a good number of them, but you've got some of them. Again, I don't want to bore you, but the technicalities, the statutes where the court is afforded a certain amount of discretion, if in fact these different elements are satisfied, to go ahead and deny bond, and they're denying bond to certain individuals with more serious, crimes that are being charged, and they're sitting in there with no way of getting out, and with no way of expediting the proceedings that the charges that have been brought against them. And to me, Victor, I handle a lot of high-end self-defense matters. So matters where people had to defend themselves, generally speaking, with a gun against an aggressor. And I've been handling this. It's a niche area, and I'm attracted to this particular area, and so I'm handling these cases. And I've got situations where I believe it's certainly a self-defense case, And you're not being charged with self-defense. Obviously, you're being charged with attempt murder. You're being charged with murder, but it's a self-defense case. And if in fact there's a finding that it is self-defense, ultimately, you're not, that you're not guilty. You're not going to be found guilty, at least in theory, depending on who the trier of fact is, of course. But so you've got cases like that. I've got an individual right now that I just really feel for him, for his family. He had to defend himself, and I'm pretty familiar with the allegations with respect to this particular client. I've read through a lot of the majority of the discovery has already been tendered, so I've had an opportunity to review that discovery, and I truly believe this is a case of self-defense, and the judge is basically shut off from hearing it. He's just like, I've decided that, that this is, that these elements have been satisfied, so I'm going to hold this person in custody. And it doesn't matter that there's a pandemic. It doesn't matter that, so many people have lost their jobs. So on top of the fact that you've got health issues, you've also got somebody that's in custody that's accused of this particular crime that now was the primary breadwinner, and other individuals in the family have lost their jobs. So
ripples.
Now more than anything else, they really need that additional support, that additional financial support. So there's multiple, you're right, ripples. There are multiple different people that are affected by these decisions, and there's a lot of discretion, and I think sometimes an abuse of discretion, and a lack of truly understanding the significance of what our system was built on, which is that whole innocent until proven otherwise. So that's certainly something that's had a significant impact on my practice, on my clients' lives, with respect to this pandemic.
Interesting. You made a video recently about voting for judges.
Yeah.
And there are materials out there where you could research judges, but does it go in depth into, like, how do you know if a judge ruled one way or another, and like if someone was innocent and they denied bond or whatever, like how do we know that? How does the people make an educated?
Well, as a general rule, when something like that happens, it's not like, as attorneys, it's not like we're out there, blasting the judges. We're not out there, posting articles or content on online for people to review. So it's a good question. There are a number of different things that judges have decided, different ways that judges have decided that have been captured by some form of media, that because of the age that we're in, the ability to be able to go ahead and just Google different names and find out different information. You can find a lot from that. You can if there's a race for a particular judge that you're very interested in, you can contact their different. There's the bar associations have gradings. They grade all these different judges, and they come out with some sort of qualified, not qualified type of, depending on which bar association, reviews you're looking up. So that could be helpful. You very often, a lot of the judges, at least from the judges that are presiding over criminal matters, they have a state's attorney background, because the state's attorney's office is a good launching pad for running for judge. You have the support of the state's attorney's office, and your colleagues, and so there are a lot of people that become judges that were former state's attorneys. And to be fair, I know some judges that are former state's attorneys that are excellent judges.
Fair,
very
right?
very excellent judges. Yeah. They're very thorough, and I don't see any way in which it's affected their ability to be impartial. But to be honest and just forthright, I see certain judges that have a state's attorney background that are certainly, in my opinion, slanted with respect to their judgment. And I know that doesn't sound all that professional to say, but I'm speaking from my experiences and my particular point of view. And I think that certainly does play a role. And I think as a general rule, I'm sure if you saw in the video, I'm sure I referenced the fact that people get so caught up, so emotionally invested in the presidential race, and I get it, and I'm not going to talk politics, but I get the fact that people get caught up, and I get the fact that people are very, very vocal about their positions, their respective positions, and maybe even like the governor's race sometimes, especially here in Illinois, because the governor's just spent more than most presidents have spent before in the past running for office. You had a billionaire against a multi-millionaire. in this most recent election. So I know there's a lot of money spent. So also, again, people get very, very involved and emotionally attached to one candidate and voice quite a bit of, opinion in that respect. But when's the last time you had any detailed discussion about, or you heard any detailed discussion about who's running for a judge? Now, with all due respect to everybody that has this, emotional attachment, and they're very, very intimately aware of all these different, issues, excuse me, that they see as being, excuse me, very powerful issues from a presidential platform. But how long does it take for a lot of those issues to actually come down to the point where they actually affect each of us
on a day-to-day basis?
On a day-to-day basis. Whereas these judges, people go to vote and they're like, I recognize this name, I'll vote for this person, or this is a man or a woman, so I'll vote for this person. Forgive me, I didn't silence the phone.
Oh, it's okay.
So you've got all those, you've got all these different candidates that are running, and they're getting votes based on their name. Maybe it's name recognition, or maybe it's just the fact that, this sounds like an Irish judge. This sounds like a Mexican judge, and African American judge. You might think that it's silly, but a lot of people vote based off of names. They'll vote based off of gender, and they obviously vote based off of a party affiliation. And you got a lot of these people that are not that are supposedly affiliated with a particular party, but they're running on that party, on that slate, or under that party because of where they're at geographically, and they don't necessarily share the views of that party. But this is how they're going to get elected. So there's just a lot of different judges that get on the bench that really nobody did any research to be able to find out anything about them. And it's sad. And you, as an attorney, as a litigator, somebody that I do a lot of litigation, I'm arguing in front of a number of these different judges on a very frequent basis, and I'm like, that it raises questions like,
how did you get here?
What's going on? Yeah, what's going on here? So again, I don't mean to hurt anybody's. This is not to hurt feelings or anything, but from my perspective, again, that's an issue. It's a common
cool. Thank you.
Issue.
Yeah. Before we get too deep, you also practice family law?
This firm practices family law. We do it. This is a general practice.
Gotcha.
So a lot of we do injury and malpractice and
DUIs
stuff.
Well.
DUIs, I love some sick twisted way. I really like DUIs.
Getting people out of DUIs.
I like the. It's not about. Some of you is like, hey, so you're putting these people back out on the streets so they can drive again, or this is part of my. This is obviously a part of my job, and I think there's a certain amount of hypocrisy out there, with respect to DUIs in general. And the reason I say that is, I know many of these judges, for example. I know I know a lot of judges on and off the bench. I've been out with different judges, or at different places where different judges are at. And as a general rule, you see people drinking, you see them going and getting in their cars and they're driving, and then you see people passing judgment on other people that have done it, and it's not against the law to drink and drive, and people think that that's against the law. It's against the law to drink to the point where you're impaired and then drive. So there's a big difference. So when I'm winning these cases, when I'm trying these cases, and I've tried a substantial amount of DUI trials. You have to keep that in mind. You have to keep in mind those two things: the bigger picture, the fact that this is a bit of a double standard. Sometimes it could be viewed in that respect, and you also have to. Meaning that a lot of people are quick to judge. Hey, look, these people, this person's got a DUI. Like, why are you representing this person at a DUI? And I get it, and I sincerely appreciate and understand the fact that that people have died because of drunk drivers, and I don't. That's not something that to just gloss over. It's very significant. People have died because of people texting on their cell phones too. There are a lot of different reasons, a lot of different things that are causing these very tragic accidents, and I'm not making light of it from a DUI standpoint, but representing these different individuals, you got people that make mistakes too, that get in a car that shouldn't have been driving, they get in a car for whatever reason they're driving. And just along the lines of DUI, the laws are very different. People aren't really fully aware of the significance of the laws. So when they're quick to judge people that are charged with something, or quick to judge people that are representing people that are charged with something, you can, for example, you went to a party, you had some drinks, it's a friend's birthday party, it's at a local bar, you have some drinks, you get in your car, you start to drive, you're about a half block away, and you're like, you know what, I'm in no condition to drive. You pull your vehicle over, you park on the side of the road, and you turn off the car and you go to sleep. The police are called and they say, hey, somebody's parked, outside of my, maybe you pull in a residential area, somebody's parked, right in front of my house, on the street, of course. They're parked there. I don't know what they're doing there. The police come just for like a safety check. They ask some questions. The person rolls down the window. There's brief communication between the officer and the individual in the car. And the officer's like, have you been drinking? And next thing you know, they're being charged with a DUI, because you can in fact be charged with driving under the influence of alcohol, even when you're not actually driving your car. And that's the laws. So, that's the law. If in fact you have the ability to drive, there have been people that have been successfully charged and tried for driving under the influence. They're sleeping in the back seat of their car, but because they have the key in their pocket in certain jurisdictions, that's enough to be considered driving or operating a vehicle while under the influence of alcohol. So, it's difficult for people on the on the outside looking in. They don't really understand the significance of all the different variations of how you can be charged, and
how easy it is to make a mistake.
Yeah, and in that case, do you really think that this person's making a mistake? Do you really think that that people are against drunk drivers would want certainly they could say, well, you should have never gotten in the car. I get that. Maybe you should have called Uber or whatever. You've got your vehicle, but you get in the car and you recognize that this is not responsible, and you pull over to sleep it off. And next thing, you're being charged with a DUI, and this is going to be like a bit of a scarlet letter, because you've got this you've got this charge, that's hanging over your head, and your insurance. Everybody is going to judge it in various different ways. I think that's pretty significant. And why is it that public policy doesn't do something to have a lesser charge if in fact you have pulled your vehicle over? Why isn't that we don't have legislation that encourages people? Hey, look, you've been driving, get off. And you feel like you've had too much.
Yeah.
Don't chance it. Pull over and.
So some of these rules
there's going to be some sort of lesser charge or something if in
okay.
fact they're going to charge you with it at all, Yeah. And it's so crazy, because somebody could just, if they knew the law, they'd take their keys out of the ignition, throw them outside the car, and then go to sleep. And then there's there's nothing there. But people don't generally,
I didn't learn this then in driver's ed.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So it's an issue. And so I'm a fan of DUI trials. I like trying DUI cases, but
So personally, you do criminal defense and DUIs.
Personally, I DUIs. It's a quasi criminal case anyway. I mean, they say it's a traffic matter, but it's in Illinois, your first offense, it's a Class A misdemeanor. It's punishable by up to 364 days in jail and up to $2,500 in fines, which makes it. It has all the earmark. It has all the appearances of a criminal charge. So yes, I do a lot of criminal defense. My firm makes the most money in injury cases, because that's a very significant moneymaker when you have substantial injury cases. But it takes so long. Most of these cases are settled, and I'm a litigator, so I enjoy going into court. I enjoy arguing. I enjoy, just getting in the ring and swinging on somebody, and crazy enough, being swung on. I like a good fight. I like it when somebody is swinging back, when they're educated and they're very well prepped for a case. I enjoy that, because I'm like, okay, this is great. This is a great opponent, and I like that. I like the fight. It makes me feel that much more determined to win the case. Actually, that's a lie. I'm always determined to win the case. But it's nice. It's nice when you've got a great opponent you're up against in the courtroom. It's like this chessboard. I love chess. It's one thing to sit down and play chess with somebody, and yeah, you can beat. If you're a decent player, you can beat the majority of people you're playing with. But there's no real
challenge.
You could tell when you're in a situation where you actually have to think, and you actually have to go ahead and think several moves in advance, as opposed to, like a chess checkers game is what I call it. Where you're basically playing checkers on a chessboard. So you're just thinking of the current moves. So yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. It's all interesting, Victor. It's everything around here is interesting. That's what keeps me up. So this is the longest, by the way, guys. This is the absolute longest that I sit in a chair. It is absolute long. I do not.
He was pacing around.
I
am
so yes. You have no idea. Like these are wood floors because I've tried carpet in here, and I wear it out. And I'm talking about decent carpet. I wear it out because I pace all over the damn place constantly. And I attribute that that's my only saving grace when it comes to like staying in some sort of reasonable shapes, because I can't sit still. Otherwise, I eat a ton, and I would, I probably wouldn't be able to get out of this chair if it was just based off of what I ate. So yeah.
Can you take it back to childhood, high school, college? Like, what did you think you'd be doing? Like the first moments you thought about your professional life, like after school, what did you think you'd be doing?
So this is one of the reasons when you asked. In fact, when you asked, hey, would you mind me coming out there to interview you? You said something along the lines of there are a lot of people. I was at one point. I think you said something about the fact that you didn't know what you wanted to do, and you really wanted to be able to go ahead and provide some insight in these different professions. And I think that's so very important to do that, and attorneys are so very different from one another, in that respect. So you can interview 20 different attorneys and get 20 totally different ideas of what this profession is about.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, what's the most, is being a litigator the most common thing that people think of when you hear attorney?
I think, I don't know what most people commonly think of because I'm on the inside looking out in that respect. But I would think that that's what most people think of, is what, an attorney, the whole profession is all about, is about litigating. But the fact of the matter is, the majority of attorneys are transactional attorneys. They're sitting at a desk. They're typing up documents. They might go to court from time to time, but that's not the day to day. Whereas for me, I've had cases. I think one day I had 21 cases up in one day. So I mean, I've always been very busy. So I'm always in the courtroom. So
that you had to litigate 21 that you had to
not litigate.
Oh,
it was not
okay.
that I had to litigate on that day. So
Wow.
litigation, as far as what I consider litigation, some people call it litigation if you have to go to court for anything. But there are a lot of statuses, which are basically just telling the judge what the current status of the case is. But I had multiple hearings up that day.
Okay.
I didn't have a trial up that day. I had multiple hearings up that day, and then multiple statuses, and it was a balancing act. But getting back to what I was saying, the reason I was venturing off here before answering your question is because I was very confused when I was younger. Okay, I was told that I had to be an attorney, and I'm not gonna elaborate on that. That might bring up a whole bunch of different questions, but I'm not gonna elaborate on that. I'm just gonna say I was told that I had to be an attorney, but I was very confused. I was very lost as a child, as a youth. I often joke around about it, but it's serious. In high school, I probably would have been voted most likely to need an attorney, not to be one. I started off at a public school. I was in a bit of trouble at the public school. I was 2 years in, and for my third year of high school, I went to a military school, so I could avoid the potential of getting kicked out of the public school. Went to a military school, probably got in more trouble in the military school than I got in the public school. In the 1 year in military school that I was there, that I got in the 2 years of public school, they had expelled me from the military school. Like when I say I was a bit of a lost soul, I was well beyond lost. I was troubled. But they had expelled me, and I was the very first. I was told at the time, which I was later told couldn't be accurate, but I was told at the time I was the very first person expelled from this military school in like was close to 100 years that had been in existence, so maybe like 97 years or 98 years or something like that. It was just shy of 100 years from what I recall. But I was the very first person expelled from it. They had never told my parents anything about all the different things that I'd been doing, so they hadn't actually given them any notice.
Oh, no.
So there was an argument, hey, you can't just drop all this stuff on us and tell him he's out of school. You're just now telling us for the first time that he had all these different, issues, run-ins, whatever. So they argued for it, and I still had 2 weeks left of the school year, so they argued successfully since they were able to since I was able to stay in there apparently, and I was threatened within an inch of my life as to what's gonna happen to me. So the least of my concerns was being expelled if in fact I officially got expelled again a second time in the course of 1 year, but then I went to so I was held back when I went to the military school. So I went from being a sophomore at a public school to being a sophomore at the military school. And then when I transferred again, because they weren't going to take a chance that I was going to get expelled the next year, wasn't a good bet at the time. When I transferred again, I transferred to a private school, and that's where I met my wife. We were pregnant and married. Interesting side note, side bit. This was a Catholic school, and you are allowed to continue going there if you're pregnant, but you are not allowed to continue going there if you're married. Sounds a little bit backwards. I don't think anybody's been able to make sense of that, but that was the case. So my wife, for her senior year, because this was her junior year, this was both of our junior years, for her senior year, she ended up finishing at the high school that I started off at. And I was able to, crazy enough, as much trouble as I got in military school, my grades improved quite a bit. I didn't have the responsibilities at the house and around the house that I had out here. And as it turned out, I wasn't all that, challenged as they probably thought I was mentally. So I was able to deliver. I was able to get decent grades. And I took this course on speed reading in military school. And I was reading faster than my speed reading teacher, and my comprehension rate was decent. It was in the, I want to say it was in the upper 60s, lower 70s, with really fast, with pretty fast speed reading. So
side tangent, what is the tidbit that makes you so good at speed reading? Scanning just like the middle of the page. Or
okay, so speed reading. So speed reading itself. This is an interesting question.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the profession, but I love tangents. Speed reading. If you ever want to try speed reading, here's what you do. You take a book, and in the very beginning, maybe take a book with larger print, larger text, font. And what you want to do is you want to take. We're taught to read a particular way. So you sound out a word, and you sound out the word obviously from left to right, and you read from left to right. You read all the words from left to right, and that's the way your eyes are trained. That's the way your brain is trained with respect to speed reading, to be able to read from left to right. And what you do is in the very beginning, you take a pen, and you put a dot, or maybe a Sharpie, and you put a dot above every two words. And what I want you to do then is you take a look at the dot. You look at the dot above those two words, and you're going to, with your peripheral vision, while looking at that dot, you're going to absorb. You're gonna see the two words underneath it. Like me looking right over here at this camera, I'm seeing you, obviously, while I'm looking at the camera.
Right.
So we're not taught to read peripherally. So what you do is you have to reteach yourself to read differently. So you put it above two dots, one dot above every two words, and then maybe you change it to one dot above every three words, and so on and so forth. And then you eventually you're able to see almost the whole line, and eventually you start moving, your eyes are starting to move like this rather than this.
Gotcha.
So and then you can reduce the size of the font and start reading more on a page and start seeing more of it. And then there are certain things which are just like cheaters, I want to call them. So like the very first sentence of a paragraph, generally the way most writers write, the very first sentence of a paragraph, if in fact it's, especially if it's nonfiction, are basically going to be, that sentence is going to basically be describing the thought that you're going to find in that paragraph, obviously, because when you go to a different thought, generally you're going to a different paragraph. So, just by reading the very first, by putting a little bit more attention on the very first sentence, you're also getting an idea what's in that paragraph, which also allows you to cheat and to go a little bit faster. But getting back to what I was saying.
Yeah.
So we're in this situation where we are nuts about each other, and I say this all the time, but I've such a screw up in so many different ways, and the one area that you can really that you really need to get lucky, the one area you really need to get lucky, is who you're going to be spending your life with, and I got got D's and F's in high school, but I got an A+++ when it came to lucking out when it came to my wife. So we got married, and she just got me. She understood me. So I didn't share with her a lot of the different, when we initially got together, because she would have ran the other way. I didn't share, too much of my background, and I was determined more or less not to talk to anybody in this particular school, because I just didn't want to get any more trouble. It's not like I was looking for trouble. I had a way of finding trouble, and trouble had a way of finding me, and it was a dangerous, combination, me and trouble. So, we got married in high school, and I was able to catch up with my class because I used the speed reading. The reason I started talking about speed reading, I used that to secure these grades at military school, and then when I returned, I used it to
catch up,
to get my grades up, get my grades better. So I was actually able to finish still with the rest of my class by graduating or summer school. After everybody had graduated, I stuck around, got my summer school, and I graduated still in the same year. And then I used speed reading to go a little bit further. So I graduated high school in 92. I got my associate's degree in 93. I got my bachelor's degree in 94. I got done with law school 2.5 years after that. So now they're just starting to, the last few years they started talking about, hey, you can do a 4-year degree in 3 years. I did a 4-year degree in 2 years when 4-year degree in 3 years wasn't even heard of. And I did law school in 2.5 years after that. And, it was just a determined, the point in my life that really made sense as far as when I knew I wanted to be a lawyer was when I realized that I was going to be a father and that we were going to have a family, and that, this was what I had already been told I wanted to do. It's just something that kind of just made, or this is what I had been told I had to do. So it's something that kind of made sense at that particular point, and it just clicked. It's just like, hey, what am I going to do? Like, I don't know enough about what's going on out there. I don't know enough about these other jobs. And I just thought, what, this is what I've been told. Why don't I just go ahead and make this happen? And I did. And when I got in the profession, I went several years. I've always been in private practice. I went several years where I was just really unhappy as a lawyer. I was just really unhappy. And I was working for family, and there was a really bad severance in a relationship, which I'm not going to elaborate on, but there was a really bad severance there. And I was literally locked out of an office, out of a family practice. I was literally locked out of the office, and I was the one that was doing all of the litigation for the office. So I'm locked out of an office when I'm the one I'm the face for all these different clients in court. And I had no savings because it was a family practice. I wasn't making that much money, and I had no savings for my future whatsoever, and I had to basically from there, and I was the sole breadwinner for our little family because my wife, when she finished with high school and went through college, she also went in law school. She also got her JD, but we decided it just made more sense for her to be with the children. We tried having other people watch our children, and nothing was working. We were not happy with what was going on, and we just felt like, hey, look, there's no amount of money that's worth, the disconnect that we're missing from not being able to share this time, this day-to-day time. So I used to joke around about it, say we both go to court, except she goes to the tennis court. 'Cause she's a tennis player. She's phenomenal at it. But yeah, so, I was the only person working at this time, and when I got locked out of this office and I had no savings, and everything's dependent on me making money. I mean, we have virtually nothing in the bank. And when I say virtually nothing in the bank, I mean virtually nothing in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a long time we were robbing Peter to pay Paul. So it was virtually nothing in the bank. Whatever was put in the bank account was basically being used for those bills. So it was a very scary time. And what most people do during this time is, aside from freaking out, what most people do is, they're immediately getting out there. They're immediately trying to figure out, where am I going to go? But we had a vacation planned with the children to go visit with her parents out of state, my wife's parents out of state. And our children were at an age where they really wouldn't really appreciate the significance of me losing my job. So I wasn't really, I didn't want to put any real emphasis on this. They were old enough to know, this was 2007. They were old enough to know that, something happened, but there weren't enough questions that would come with it because of their age. They didn't say, well, what about this, or what about this, or are we going to be okay? And so I wanted them to be as least affected by it as possible. And this happened in July of 2007. And so instead of getting out there and immediately looking, we took off on the road trip, and I spent the time out there with my wife trying to figure out what we were going to do to be able to make this happen and start up my own practice. And we just did it. We made it happen. I got a small business loan for $50,000, which is huge. It's huge
Wow.
to me. And I got a $50,000 business loan. And the reason I was able to get an SBA loan for $50,000 is because I'm an attorney. I was an attorney. So, there's certain professions, I think, that they just regard as being a better bet. The banks do, just
Right.
in general.
Right.
And I had been practicing there at that time for 9 years, from 98 through 2007, approaching 9 years. And so the thing of it was, they gave me this. I think it's it's a small business loan, but it's more like a furniture, like get your office together type of thing. As far as what I did, I invested in some furniture, like that couch, for example, was one of the very first things that I
Are we in the
got.
same office that you started in?
No, not at all. That couch, and I invested in these other things, these other pieces of furniture for the office, but. And one of my sisters showed up to help paint. My brother helped, my little brother helped. So, people are, we're putting this together for me, helping to put this together. And I used the bulk of that money to take out phone book ads, because then phone books were huge. So I'm dating myself quite a bit now. But 2007, just 14 years ago, phone books were huge. They were huge. So it was a major, that's where, you look for an attorney, was on the phone book. You weren't looking for an attorney online at that time. You were really, the majority of the public was looking for an attorney in the phone book. And these ads were horrific, very, very expensive. And I took out and committed to paying for these different phone book ads for the full page ads at the very beginning. Just went all out. I'm a gambler at heart. I love gambling. I play poker. I shouldn't say a lot of poker, because I'd like to play a lot of poker, but a decent amount of poker. And I just gambled on myself. We gambled on us, and we took out these ads with no ability to be able to go ahead and cover this unless it started working. And it was crazy, as my hair was shorter then. And I had always had this more traditional haircut. There's more in keeping with the office that I was in, and everything else. And when I went out on vacation, I generally cut my hair right around that time, and I didn't, because we just had so much going on, stress-wise and everything. I didn't cut my hair, so I was out there, and we were out there for a couple of weeks, and my hair continued to grow, and I came back, and it became just a subject for conversation. So the people at the courthouse are just starting to really, recognize me more and more. They're like, you're growing out your hair, Johnny Depp, this, and just different, rock star, this whole crazy, this, and so I grabbed it and just ran with it. All right, everybody's this rock star type attorney, so I'm like, hey, I got that. I can do that. That's fun. That's a job I would have really liked to do if I had a voice or if I could act. But anyway, so I started doing that, and gradually things started happening. And This was July of '07 where I was locked out. In March of '08 is when I made my very first big purchase, and it's still with me today as far as my vehicles. I'm a big fan of fun cars, but it's outside, and it's a pretty nice vehicle. It's not a typical attorney vehicle, and I started driving this car, and the license plate I got for this car says "Never Lose," so. It really started. The advertising is really the advertising is what really what I really enjoy about. It's not what I really enjoy about the profession, but I really enjoy the advertising with in conjunction with how I handle myself as a businessman, because I consider myself a businessman before an attorney. And the reason I say this is because I'm very much against the grain. People come into my office and they're greeted in jeans and a t-shirt, generally speaking, and whatever crazy kicks I might be wearing for the day. I'm kind of basic today, but they're greeted in that way, and not just by me, but by other attorneys that I have working in my office, and by everybody. So it's I really want to stress the whole relatable element,
Absolutely.
the relatability, and so we do that, and what I enjoy with the marketing is the whole not your typical attorneys, as you said. That's the branding behind what we do, and I just like going out there, and I just like being me, and not having any restrictions. And once I realized that I could just do that, I could grow the hair out. I could present myself however I want to be able to present myself. I could just communicate however I want to be able to communicate without barriers, without those traditional barriers. Affecting how I'm going to communicate with my clients, or affecting how I'm going to communicate with people over the courthouse. It was embraced by so many people, because they're like, hey, I can get behind this guy. I can understand this guy. And, you've still got a bunch of people that are like, well, that's not professional. I don't like the way this looks, or I don't like the way this office looks. It looks more like, like a frat house. And yes, it does. And these bottles are all from clients. These other things that are on the walls, the majority of these things were purchased by clients. And so, people are very quick to judge, and it's crazy. I'm talking about judging because there's a lot of prejudice in my profession, against my clients, or, and based on just prejudging, just based on prejudging what you hear. And it was crazy because when I picked up this car, people started saying, okay, well, this guy is really, really, really doing well. He's at the at the top here. He's a game changer. So, just based off the type of car that I'm driving at that time, and I just roll with it. I started really truly understanding, appreciating just how much people want to connect with somebody that's different. They want to connect with somebody that sets him or herself apart from others in the profession. And it's been a roller coaster. It's been all over the place since. It's just been a lot of fun.
I think authenticity is rare. And I think people do want to connect with authenticity, because maybe in their own industry you feel like you can't be yourself. You have to put on a mask. Yeah. You have to dress a certain way. My hair was just as long as yours. Not too long ago.
You're doing the reverse. You're doing the reverse.
Thanks to the pandemic, my parents begged me. They're like, it just, to them, it looked unprofessional. But I got compliments left and right. It's just like,
well, it sets us apart. Beck, it sets us apart because people are like, oh, go to, it's, I don't remember his name, but it's the attorney with the long hair. It's the attorney that's doing this, or it's the attorney that's doing that. And this office, we bought this building. I want to say it was like 2011. So maybe I've been here maybe 2012, close to 10 years.
Almost 10 years, yeah.
We bought this building, and it's an old bank building. So my office is in a vault. Yeah, around the corner, my office is in a vault. But I mean, we don't generally meet with people. The very few people that come in here, I meet with them, in this open area, so they feel more comfortable. We have a downstairs to this building also with several offices down there. And we have tenants upstairs that live upstairs. So it's a party place. It's very fun. It's very relaxed. You've got the bumper pool table. You got the foosball table. am horrible at foosball. I'm the guy you don't want to play in foosball. Everybody hates me in foosball because I just spin them as fast as possible, and that's what I'm trying to do to make it. And this is what I'm trying to do to block it, and it's pathetic, and I know that. I'm seeing a counselor about it. I'm trying to get over it, but I'm horrible at the game. And we got vinyl in here. We got chess. I just brought in a Miss Pac-Man game, a real old retro Miss Pac-Man game, which is kind of lonely over there because it has to be.
Okay, cool.
I have to give it a little love before putting it out. But and we have stuff downstairs. We just like to relax. We like to have that type of atmosphere for people that are working here. I don't look at people as working for me. I work with people, so I'm not one of those people. When you're working at this office, it's McDermott Law Group, so you expect, okay, well, who's this McDermott guy? But it's not like that. The other attorneys in this office, the paralegal secretary. The way I feel about it is it's a regardless of what your position is in this firm or what you do for this firm, we are all necessary. So it's all necessary for the client, and we all work together. And this isn't exaggerated. Like you could talk to the people that work here. Nobody's going to say that. I never ask anybody to do something. I shouldn't say never because I'm sure there's an exception, but you'd be hard pressed to find one without saying please. Even in text messages, I say, "Can you please do this? Can you please do that?" I never bark out commands, and I always say thank you. I mean, it's just a part of. It's a part of who I want to be, and to me that's a big thing. So this whole being yourself and just doing your own thing and letting your hair down, literally, figuratively, there's a lot of truth to it, Vic. There's a lot of truth to just doing that, and regardless of whether it's in law or whatever profession it might be in, if people can relate to you and they can vibe with you, they feel that energy coming from you, you're going to be better off in general, regardless of your profession.
Absolutely. So what does your maybe hiring process look like?
Okay. Well, I'm exposed. I'm basically naked if I answer this question because people are like, how do you determine who you're hiring? It's an energy thing, guys.
I hear that
very
a lot.
much an energy thing. So I have people that interview here that have attended some of the best law schools. It's not about what law school you went to. I mean, that could be great. If it ends up being that you're gonna be working here, it's great that because a lot of people are like, oh, she went to such and such school, or he went to such and such school. So it could be a great thing for you, but it's not what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for your experience as far as where you've been, who you've been working for or with, so much as I am. I'm looking for somebody that's relatable, somebody that's got a good energy, somebody that I think my clients can relate to, that is going to have patience, that is going to be able to deal with stress, because we have a lot of fun here. These bottles aren't just decorations. We open these bottles. We very much open these bottles, and many of these bottles are like third, fourth generation of the bottle, because they've been disposed of and replaced several times. If we had a bottle graveyard, it would be pretty damn crazy by now. But I'm looking for people that get the culture of this office, that get what it is that we're trying to convey to our clients. And that's very simple. There's a sense of relatability, which is very key. But there's also there's some depth. There's a sense of depth, and what I mean by that is it's not just about being relatable and okay, this person is signed, and now they feel like, well, I've got some fun people represent me or something along those lines. It's not that type of relatable. It's yes, that's important if they feel like they've got a connection there, but it's actually legitimately caring about your clients and your clients' cases. I give some discounted retainers from time to time from people that are referred in the office, and I tell them, hey, I'm going to discount your retainer based on this referral here, because I believe in that. I believe in referrals, but I'm not going to in any way. What I never discount how hard we fight for our clients. And it's not saying it for pitch purposes or because this is being captured on video. It's very real. It's very much who we are. We very we're very determined to find different ways to fight these cases and be able to get results for our clients in ways that people haven't fought cases before. And I think that's helped us to stand out, and that's helped us to because our clients know that, and because I'm just gonna say that because they know it, truly know that we've got their back, and that we truly are gonna fight for them, whatever area of law it might be. I think that's why we get the referrals, and that's why we've garnered the trust that we have of this community. And I no longer do the phone book advertising, but I've got television commercials, I've got movie theater commercials, I've got a lot of different branding. There were no attorneys doing movie theater commercials. I would have like a commercial, like a legit, very well shot, very well thought out commercial, playing before every single movie in certain theaters all day long. Tons and tons of viewers. It had never been done before from this huge company. It's a national company. They said they didn't have any attorneys that were doing it. And I just did it because you've got a captive audience, or had a captive audience. Even that's changed, because now people can buy their tickets well in advance, already have their specific seats. They don't have to worry about rushing, getting there early, watching all these different things. So you got people like me that come in 5-10 minutes late anyway, because I know I've got my seat. But I've had all these different commercials. I have billboards out there right now, which are very different. They're not like the guy in a suit, with his chest out, or any of that type of stuff. It's very much.
Glenn Lerner. He looks like The Rock with hair.
He's You're in good shape, Glenn. You're in good shape. You appear to be in good shape. Fortunately, these fights that I get into in the courtrooms, they're not like how physically, in shape I am. So I work out, but I'm just saying I'm not like this big buff guy on a billboard with a suit on. It's impressive, man. Even your stance, it's impressive. But yeah, I even the billboards are fun. It's a poke at the whole traditional perspective of attorneys. It's not your typical attorney's billboards. There's a whole bunch of. We've had some fun ones. I had one that was that American Hustle movie. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It was a pretty decently watched movie. It did, I would imagine, pretty decent in the box office. But I did a billboard that was very much the same thing, and I took 5 attorneys, and we called it American Muscle. We had a baseball bat, like different things, like we're ready to go, or it's basically we're gonna get in there, and we're gonna fight for you. And we had some different fun billboards, that, because you have to balance with advertising, with marketing. You have to balance, is it too cheesy because it's just so far removed from professional that that's not good, and at the same time, so you have to have something professional. We want something professional that's relatable. So it's a very difficult thing in this particular profession to obtain that result, to get something that's both professional and relatable. So we've had a lot of fun with billboard designs, but the reason I'm saying all this is because all these different forms of marketing that we do, and I've just recently started this whole the social media, which is how we got introduced. Even TikTok, which is very different because you're limited to a minute, and
also
obviously
Jameson, if you're listening.
Yes, Jameson first and foremost. I wasn't going to name drop. But anyway, yeah, that's why I figured I'd be introduced in the future, like, oh, that's Jameson's father. Oh, that's Jameson's father. Hi, I'm Jameson's father. Yeah, I'm not even gonna have a name because this girl's doing so many awesome things in her career and with her life, and I'm fortunate enough to have a seat in the audience and watch it as it grows, her career. But yeah, it's just kind of like it's been a balancing act in that respect, and I enjoy the challenge of trying to do that without stepping too far over the lines. Step over the line enough to get notice, but not too far where you're getting all the negative. You can't avoid hate, right? You can't avoid, haters are gonna hate. You just can't avoid that. But not stepping too far over where you got too many people like, I don't know about this guy. So
that's a good mindset to have about even social media. Uh-huh. You're gonna get positive feedback, negative feedback, and kind of any attention is good attention in a way. And you just don't mind what other people are saying, and just content is king. So keep putting out good content.
Oh, I appreciate it. It's different. I've got Jameson for that as well. So she kind of slaps me around some of these videos and puts things in perspective. So it's good. Yeah.
At what point in an attorney's journey would someone feel ready to step out on their own, or is it unheard of, or is it heard of that they would just go straight into private practice?
So that's a dangerous question. It's something that comes from personal feel. I've got quite a bit to say on that issue as far as this particular stage of this particular climate right now that we're in, that I can't share just yet, which is really crazy, bizarre. I don't even know why the hell I just alluded to something, and I'm not going to share with it. But I've got certain things that I would say to certain attorneys if they were young attorneys, if they were contacting me, and I like helping younger attorneys and giving them direction, and people in law school and people even in college that are asking questions about law school and so on and so forth. But I think it's very different, Vic. It's very different from person to person. You have to understand something, which I'm going to go out and say it's a blanket statement, but it's my perspective, my perception, from what I know. Most attorneys are not good business people. And I'm not saying that I am, guys. That is what it is. I'm just saying there's a general rule. Most attorneys are not good business people. And what I mean by that is you might have an attorney that you put him in a courtroom, and this attorney is very capable of arguing for his or her client and obtaining a positive result for his or her client the majority of the time. But outside of the courtroom is just not really able to represent himself or herself in the same way that he or she is able to represent their client. So, that's a bit of a different thing. Law and business, they're very different, and I think that that a part of the reason that we're so successful at this office, this firm, is that we are, at least we perceive ourselves to be business-minded, that we're focused on the business of the office. Whether we're good business people or not, I'll leave that to other people's opinion. But we focus on the business side of this, and it's very difficult. You could be the best litigator. I shouldn't say that, because I think the best litigators are really they probably have an advantage over the general attorney populace. But you can be the best litigator, just for purposes of just saying this, and still not have any idea how to run a business. And a lot of people are traveling in just one lane. And if you're in just that lane and you're good at that lane, it's difficult to step out of that lane and start figuring out, okay, how am I going to do this or how am I going to do that? Like, for example, there are people that, they work for a firm, and, the firm, there are other people that basically monitor the billing and everything else, and all these different things that attorneys might, just take for granted that are being done by other individuals, which is why I say I don't, we all work together. But you don't really truly appreciate the significance of everything that has to go into doing all this stuff until you're in a business of your own, and you're in an office of your own, and you have to actually do all these different things. So you go from being in a very comfortable situation in one respect, it's comfortable in one situation in one respect, which is that you already know what your 9 to 5 is. So if it's going to change, and you're working for a firm, and your 9 to 5 is going to change, the firm is basically handling the changes. You're not generally. You're assigned to certain clients. You have to get certain work done for these clients, and that's basically your focus. And you put a shingle up, and you open up your own spot. You now are focused on the rent, all the utilities. If something goes down in your place, if something is something like the air conditioning, and there's an issue with air conditioning or something, and you've got people in your office, and it's 90 plus degrees outside, you're going to have to go ahead and stop doing whatever you're doing for the attorneys, for the client rather, and focus on your office. Otherwise, everybody's got to leave. I mean, it's simpler things once you know about them, that you just wouldn't. You don't necessarily consider as an attorney.
Definitely not.
So these things can, and generally will affect your progress and your ability to stay in business. If you're for example, if you're very just aggressive just in your overall demeanor, and that might be why you're able to obtain results for your clients. But you can't be aggressive in the law office and start treating different people a particular way, because they're not going to want to work for you, or they're going to be unhappy. And now with having your own practice, you have to be worried about people, a secretary or somebody being unhappy in your office, because if they're unhappy, a client comes in, and that carries over, their emotions are carrying over into this new relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear several times you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. Well, generally it's not you that's making the first impression for your office. It's whoever's up front, whoever's answering the phone, whoever's initially meeting with the clients and saying, hey, she'll be with you shortly. That's the person that's making the first impression, and you have to be aware of that. You have to be cognizant of that. And I'm very fortunate that I just really enjoy the relationships. I really like the people that are working in this office, and I really enjoy the relationships, and I value these relationships, and I feel that that's reciprocal. Again, I can't speak for others, but I feel that's reciprocal. So I'm very fortunate in that regard, because I think we all work well together, and so I think that transcends, that carries over with how we conduct ourselves, as a business, not as a law firm, as a business. And I think that's, getting back to your question, I think that's what's very often misunderstood or not truly taken into consideration, is what it is that you have to do to be able to succeed as a business.
It is very tough. And I recently was in a situation to where, like, I felt like starting your own business, like a training company, was my only outlet, because we did not have a cohesive, like, our director is not about what we do, and they would actually want us to leave, and we're trying to move to another department within the university and whatnot. But it is difficult to start something. Horrible. It's difficult to start, and all anyone would want to ask for is to work with people that see them and respect them, and you're a pleasure to be around, and you create magic together. And I hope something like that happens sooner than later. But I don't think, like, if that situation were to happen and I didn't have to start a business, I would happily take that business. Not everyone's meant to be an entrepreneur, and I feel like I'm squeezing it out of me if that's the route I'm where to go.
Hey, I mean, you're dedicated, you're passionate. Obviously, this is something that you're doing on the side. You share with me your schedule. I don't know if you shared with your viewers your schedule, but it's quite a bit that you're balancing. I mean, you got quite a bit going on. Children, obviously, at some point, that certainly, takes up a certain amount of your attention. To me, the majority, in between. So you've got family commitments that obviously have to that play a role in your overall schedule. But something in that respect, and I think this is something important to share. When you are able to truly understand who you are in your workplace, there's a certain amount of magic that comes with it. So I started talking about the letting the hair down, and the overall design of the office, and the overall appearances of the people in this office. But there's more to that. There's quite a bit more in that. I vacation quite a bit, and I'm not saying that to brag about it, in the respect in the way that people would brag about vacationing quite a bit. But I am bragging about it in one way, and the way that I'm bragging about it is something that I hope I could impart to you, that I can impart to other people. We need an opportunity to recharge our batteries. When I'm here, I have fun, but I work really hard. I work really hard for my clients. This is not, many shops, many attorney, many law offices are 9 to 5 or whatever the hours are, and you go home and you're in relax mode. You get to just go ahead and turn off. And one of the things about being an entrepreneur, one of the things about owning your own business, is to truly be effective, to truly best represent your clients. You can't turn it off. You don't get to turn it off.
No,
so
you call you they show. They call you show.
Exactly.
Right.
So you have to be there mentally 24 hours. And my phone rings 24 hours. And something that I did a while back, as far as the culture of this office, is I give my clients my cell phone. I don't have a cell phone that's a business line and a cell phone that's a personal line. I give them the only cell phone that I have, and I say, look, I always answer calls unless I'm in the middle of something. I can't get to my phone, but just shoot me a text and I'll call you back. And I do that, and it's something I've always stayed on top of. And I think that's again something that I think that helps our firm to stand out from other offices, because it's a huge complaint. I can never get in touch with my attorney, so that's how I avoided that. And I used to be horrible at that. I used to be I didn't want to be horrible at it, but I was just horrible at it. And when I started giving my cell phone number out, I realized, hey, I can't run from this. They're going to call my cell phone. I'm going to have to. So it forced me to change the way I was doing things. But the reason I'm saying all this is because getting back to the vacationing, it's, as I said, it's so important to recharge your batteries. And, something that I really want to help entrepreneurs, younger entrepreneurs especially, to understand is how essential it is. We couldn't vacation because we were children having children at
Right.
It wouldn't make any sense. We just couldn't do it. We couldn't afford, we weren't making that kind of money to be able to vacation. And it was several years, and our closest friends were like, so they're a couple that we're just nuts about. They're like, hey, why don't we go on a trip together? We're like, we got all this stuff, and they're both very successful. They're independently successful, and so they're like, hey, you gotta do things like this every now and then, kind of just like pulling us in. You gotta get out every now and then. And when we went on this trip, and we had a blast. We had an absolute blast, and it's a trip that we take actually every year at the same time. But because I keep rambling, I'm gonna just leave it at that. And we went on this trip, and I realized I came back, and there was a lot more. There was stuff that had built up, because that's another thing when you're in your own business. You're ultimately responsible for overseeing everything that's going on. So there's certain things that built up while I was gone. But when I came back, I just felt like, hey, I'm totally recharged. I'm ready. Let's do this. Let's do this. And I think that what people have to do, and there's much more of a focus on it right now. My oldest he's finished up his degree right now, but in the mental health profession, and it's so huge. There's so much that's overlooked. There's so many people that are so unhappy. Like when you said that earlier, Vic, you're like, I just truly want to be appreciated in the place that I'm working, or the people that I'm working with. There's so much there's so much that can be said about that. There's so much truth to that. So, vacationing, forcing yourself to get away, even if it's a staycation, forcing yourself to removing yourself from your business, and focusing, just focusing on the people that you care about, or even focusing on yourself, regardless, whatever your situation might be, just removing yourself from the day-to-day grind, and forcing yourself to do this is, I think it's a quintessential. It's a huge.
Were you a workaholic at first?
Oh, when I started this
like
up,
you had to be, but yeah.
It was, so I went from being very unhappy in the way that I was conducting my, the way I was as an attorney and what was going on, and into finding myself, as I said. And that process, that transitioning process, was very difficult, because it wasn't like an overnight. It wasn't like a snap of the fingers. Like now everything makes sense. Everything's very clear right now. I'm at a point where it just all makes sense. And if somebody's talking to me about what they're doing, I feel like, hey, I might be able to go ahead and provide some things, some very necessary recommendations, information to people that are starting off in whatever capacity, based off of a conversation, just sharing different things that I've done, because it's so clear to me. It's just very, very clear to me. And it doesn't, what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for everybody. But I'm talking in generalities with respect to vacationing, with respect to getting away. And I think that's something that does work for everybody. I think that it's very difficult to understand it, to appreciate, to embrace it. But I think that once you do understand it, and you do appreciate it, and you do embrace it, and you make it a part of how you're going to conduct your business, and you force yourself to go ahead and get away every so often, it's very good for you, for your mental health, and it's very good for obvious reasons. It's very good to the people around you that you work with, to be able to go ahead and remove yourself. And that's another part of the culture at this office, is that there are certain things that come up, and people call and they're like, hey, I'm not gonna be able to make it. Sometimes it's just like last minute, like, I'm not gonna be able to make it in today, and somebody's got like 3 or 4 cases up. I'm like, okay, well, they'll explain what the heck's going on, and be like, well, I get it, I understand. We're just gonna have to figure out how this is gonna happen, and those things happen. They don't happen every day, fortunately. They don't happen, crazy often, but they definitely happen often enough where I can actually cite to different times that they happen. and we just work together to try to more or less as a work family to try to cover those gaps. But the reason I say this is because you don't really, most workplaces you can't do something like that. So if something comes up, with your child or with your with some obligation over here, some obligation over there, people are not flexible. So
people
they
are
just
reluctant
expect,
to take on extra work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's up their own. So.
That as well. So it's just, I think it's incredibly important to make sure that you take some me time and some family time, in whatever profession you're in, to do that. And I think that it's most important to do it as an entrepreneur. I think that if you're going to start your own business, you certainly have to have the grind. You have to go in really hard. You have to grind. But once you've built the foundation for your business, and you're now working on just building, you're just now working on building your business up and raising it as bringing it as high as you possibly can, or whatever direction you ultimately want to go, because some people obviously go sideways. Once you've figured that out, once you've built that foundation, you have to incorporate the me time. You have to incorporate the vacation, staycation time. You have to recharge, because it's going to make you a better person. In turn, it's going to make you a better entrepreneur, and it's going to yield greater fruits. It's going to be a far more productive it's going to result in far more productive workspace.
When you were considering opening up your own private practice, did you consider a partner? Did you know anyone at that time?
I didn't. So I didn't want to go into business with anybody, and I'll just leave it at that. I didn't want to go into business I didn't want to have a partner. I've had partners since I went on in a private practice, but I didn't want to have a partner. And the reason I didn't want to have a partner is because I just kind of felt like I had to stand and fall on my own. Throughout life, you want to be able to, so bad you want to be able to crawl. Then you want to be able to, pull yourself up alongside of things, and you want to be able to stand, and you want to be able to walk. And no matter what area of life you're at, no matter what level, what age, you fall. You fall along the way. It's just that's the laws of nature. That's the law of life. You're gonna fall. You're gonna take some falls. And I kind of didn't want to be connected to anybody else on this particular journey and trying to figure out how I was going to do this. It was somewhat thrust upon me, but it's just the way that the universe worked. It's just the way that my life worked. I believe things happen for a reason, and I think that this happened for a reason at a particular time, for that reason as well. And I just wasn't looking for any partner because I just it was scary and exciting at the same time, and I just wanted to. My partner is my wife, and first and foremost, and I think my second at that time, as far as who was going to be in a position to help me most, was my brother, my little brother. He helped to kind of build the culture that I wanted, that we wanted. He's since moved to California, but that was what we wanted to do with the business in general. And since the focus was more on business and less on law, I didn't want to be more or less being connected with any particular type of personality. I wanted to first try to establish my own presence.
Okay. And now you operate in other states. Right?
Yeah, so
Florida and California.
So we do my niche area right now. We're not allowed to say specialized. By the way, as an attorney, you're not supposed to say I specialize in this. I specialize in that. So you have to kind of dance around these issues. It's not like people are really going to get in trouble for it, but you can. It's not proper. It's not. They strongly discourage to the point where you could potentially, be censored if you're doing it too much. So you're supposed to avoid things like that. So you don't say specialized, but I'm attracted to a lot of, like I said, a lot of self-defense cases.
Gotcha.
And so I do a lot of self-defense work, and I'm interested in taking cases, self-defense based cases out in California and Florida. I have satellite offices by virtue of relationships that I have in those states. So what happens as an attorney, you get licensed to practice in one particular state. Now you can also have a federal license for like things like bankruptcy and stuff like that, where they're federal-based cases where you can go ahead and practice in multiple states. But generally, most practitioners are practicing in state courts far and away, far more often than federal courts. And you can apply to practice pro hoc vice, which is just a fancy way of saying, you're like, whoa, what's that? It's a fancy way of saying there's a lot of Latin terms in the law. And you can apply to practice pro hoc vice in other states. So basically, you have to be in good standing in the state that you're practicing. And I've been doing this 23 years here. And you have to have somebody in that other state more or less swear swear by your, not just the fact that you're in good standing, but the fact that they're going to more or less watch the process. They're going to be a part of the process in some way, kind of because they have that California-based background or Florida-based background or whatever state you might be in. So they can go ahead and say, hey, I've been practicing this long, so I can oversee to make sure that this attorney is familiar with the procedural aspects of this and that, and so on and so forth. So you can get permission. So, for example, I just finished a couple of different felony matters out in Riverside, California. I travel from time to time. I can take, because of my relationships with other attorneys, you can take on various different injury cases from just about any state. If we were talking about like significant, injury cases, we could do those. Aside from those two types of cases, injury or injury-based and self-defense matters, I'm not, as a general rule, all that likely to travel from state to state to go ahead and take on other matters. I have one attorney in my office. One of those, she happens to be the wife in that equation that I said earlier. Our closest friends. She happens to be the wife of that couple, and she and I worked together for a while when she first got out, because she hasn't been practicing as long. So I was already on my own, and she's worked with me for a while, and she's wicked smart, as they would say out in Boston. I just want to say wicked smart, because she's not from Boston, neither am I. But she's very smart. She's got
like Matt Damon vibes.
Yeah, right. You're right. I love that movie. She was able to take and pass the bar exam in Florida and California, and here in Illinois. So she has the ability to help me to practice pro hoc vice on these different states herself, and she's still a business partner of mine, or business partners. So that works as well. But yeah, so I'll take cases in different states depending on what type of cases they are. And I always have to consider how cost effective it is for our clients. And I legitimately do that as well. And I say legitimately because I realize that we're not just talking between ourselves, so I don't want it to come across as like something that's promoting my brand. It's just legitimately, I genuinely, I take into consideration whether it makes sense for people to hire us on different things. And so what I mean by that is, I was doing divorce, you said family law, and I said, no, I don't do family law. I did it for the first 19 years. I did nothing but, I did a ton of criminal defense for the first 19 years. I still do criminal defense, but a ton of family law. And then, I had some decent exposure to injury cases. So I've had all these different things that that I've a background in arguing a lot of different areas of law. But what's happened now is that I've gotten to a point where with respect to certain areas of law, I just don't even want to. I don't want to touch them anymore. I was unhappy practicing family law. I consider myself pretty damn good, pretty proficient in family law. I could recite statutes faster than you could actually be, looking at them, reading them, word for word. I was arguing that often. I just wanted to make sure I understood all that stuff, and I wasn't. It wasn't something that I enjoyed. I didn't really like.
Is it because of
law.
the circumstance, like what was going on with the family?
I just don't. I consider family law the real criminal area of law.
Whoa.
Yeah. You know why? Because there's this saying, and it's a stereotype. I get it, and it's not true across the board, but there's truth in it. And the saying is that with criminal law, you've got bad people acting their best. In family law, you've got good people acting their worst. And the underlying truth, the underlying message to it. Forgive the phone again. It's horrible. I should just get out of this chair, but this is so professionally set up.
It's all good. It's all good.
I don't want to move. But the underlying message there has truth to it. If regardless of how good a person or a bad person you are in a criminal defense matter, and when you're criminally charged, you're on your best behavior. Yeah. You're under the microscope. So you can't afford to get in any trouble. It's a violation of bail bond, or it's this or it's that, or there are consequences to it. And in family law, conversely, with family law, it doesn't mean that everybody that's going through a family law or a divorce matter or a custody matter or whatever the matter might be is a good person, because that's not that's certainly not true either. It's not. We don't define ourselves by what area. What we're a party to and what area of litigation. But there's truth. There's an underlying truth to that as well, because you have so many people that are so intimately, emotionally, psychologically connected to their case, because you're dealing with a child, for example, or you're dealing with a long-term relationship that you've had with this person for however long you've lived together. So like these two people once loved each other, like at each other's throats, and making things difficult, or you're arguing for, like I said minutes ago or seconds ago, you're arguing for a child, for example. That's very significant. So of course it's going to result in a certain behavior. It's going to invoke. It's going to it's going to have you acting a particular way. And it's so difficult dealing with that day in and day out, dealing with people that are just that are just like out for blood or that are very destroyed, because they're dealing with this side of somebody that they once loved, that, or maybe even still do love, that's treating them horribly. And you've got children that are being torn from homes. You got, there's just a lot there. With criminal defense, I'm like, I could play the role of a superhero. Like, I'm representing you. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go ahead and get some results. You can't guarantee results. I never do, but I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna fight for you. And they're just like, hey, yeah, I've heard this, I've heard that. You're, just. I'm just putting this in your hands, and please do whatever you can for me. And in family law, it's like it's a nonstop grind. It's a nonstop interaction, because it and understandably so, because people are dealing with this stuff. It's their lives. It's these relationships. It's their children. It's their there's so many different things that are affecting it. And then you have other people that move into these relationships and also create additional turmoil and additional issues. So I always hated family law.
And the outcome is is still out of your hands.
Not only is the outcome still out of your hands, but who's the winner? I mean,
are there
generally the attorneys. The attorneys, and that's what I tell people. The attorneys are very often the winners in divorce cases. You want to fight over who gets to keep the pet parakeet. You're spending so much money. And the marital estate, generally speaking, it only has so much money. Even the multi-million-dollar marital estates, it just means that they end up spending that much more money in attorney's fees. So who's the winner? The attorneys are very often the winners, or at least can be considered the winners, because if you're going through a divorce, you don't get to keep all your property anyway. Let's just start that. It's just as a general rule. The property's being divided. I don't know if you ever saw War of the Roses with Michael Douglas, great actor. I was too young to remember what the hell that movie. I just remember that he's putting a chainsaw through a desk and a chainsaw through a couch or whatever the heck it is. Oh, we're splitting up the property and start splitting it. And I'm sure that's not exactly what happened, but that's what I remember happening. But the point is that everything's being split up between these individuals, and it's rarely split up amicably. But even if it is split up amicably, you're parting with certain property. But more importantly, put the property aside. Where you have children, you're parting with your children. Even if you have custody and the other person has visitation, and we don't call it custody and visitation anymore because the laws have changed a bit. So even if you've got, even if you're the primary residential parent and the other side, is exercising parenting time, when they're exercising their parenting time, when your ex-spouse is with the children, that's time that you don't obviously have with the children. And it's difficult to understand and appreciate. And I'm not saying from personal experience, because very fortunately, I cannot speak from personal experience in that regard. We're celebrating 29 years married. I said that we got married in high school, but I didn't mention that we're celebrating 29 years.
Wow.
This year. So, I can't speak from personal experience, but I can speak from experience as an attorney that's representing people that are going through this. It's horrific. I mean, it's just like, you recognize that you've always had a certain amount of control over what's going on. These are your children, and all of a sudden that control is being divided, and somebody else, an external source, a third party is now saying, when you can and can't see your children, and under what circumstances and where, and you need permission to leave the state for certain things with your children, or to do this or to do that. And it's just like, now there's a rule book in place for something that would otherwise be so natural, that a lot of people in healthy relationships might be taking for granted, that the fact
absolutely.
that they have this ability to be able to do this. So I just think it's a really ugly area of law. I fortunately have I have people that are very
willing to do it,
that are willing to do it, and that enjoy doing it. So I'm not trying to say, hey,
and why,
don't
why,
do family law, don't practice family law. It's different for different people.
Why do you think they enjoy it?
Well, I can't speak for why they enjoy it. You know what? I'm at a loss to understand why anybody enjoys it. That's how much I despise, I dislike family law. And you know what I really don't like about family law is that you've got attorneys very often, in general, they just adopt the positions of their clients regardless. And I think that that's dangerous. It's not healthy to do that. I don't think it's healthy to do that. That doesn't mean we can't fight aggressively for our clients. But when you get to the point where you're just like, where you're so, I don't want to say closed-minded, but I already said it, I guess. When you're so like you're only looking at the case from one vantage point, from one understanding. Whatever your clients told you, whether your clients told you the truth or not, you're not the one that's actually personally witnessing this or experiencing these things. So if it in certain ways, it prevents you from being able to effectively communicate with the other attorney, because you're like, I've got attorneys that came up to me. Do you know what your client just did? Your client just did this, and your client just did that, and your client just. I'm like, I'm sorry. Let's just back up for a minute. When did you start living with your client? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you're obviously living at the house because you're telling me what my client did. So obviously you saw this stuff firsthand, right? I mean, this is something you personally witnessed, right? I mean, you're in my personal space telling me. And by the way, I don't like people being in my personal space. That's a real serious issue. If you're an attorney, you got to recognize I was not always an attorney. So you get in my personal space, we're going to have a problem. But generally speaking, except Glenn Lerner, because you look like a no, I'm joking now. So, but the thing of it is, I don't appreciate people getting in my face and telling me like all these different things as though they know exactly what the heck's going on.
Right.
I mean, it's back off. You're a lawyer. You're supposed to advocate for your client, but there's a place to do that. When people meet with me in this office, I'm not throwing out a whole bunch of fancy legal words. I can speak in very fancy legal words because I have to when I'm in a very fancy legal courtroom or forum of any kind. But I don't do that with my clients. I speak the way I'm speaking right now because, it's not going to benefit my clients, me speaking over their head or about, using terms that they don't even know what the heck I'm actually referring to.
Do most attorneys have that difficulty?
I'm gonna argue yes, or maybe they don't have the difficulty, but they just believe that they have to speak a particular way to go ahead and present themselves a particular way. And again, that's part of the culture of this office. I think that's what gives us an advantage because we don't do that. But yeah, it's very often I know this because I meet with so many people and I speak to so many people about their situations and really, in most instances, about their lives and sometimes about their secrets. And they tell me their experiences at other offices. And it's a compliment. It's a compliment because that's how they perceive us, that they feel like they can speak to us that way. And that's what I was talking about when I was talking about the advertising earlier, when I was talking about how much we spend in advertising and how many different ways in which we advertise. It wasn't to talk about all the advertising itself. It was to say that the advertising is good for awareness. It's good for branding. It's good for letting people know that you're here. But ultimately, the people that are hiring this firm, the vast majority of them are coming in because they heard of our reputation. So when you bring all this stuff together, when people come in here, for example, and they tell me what they're experiencing, and this is what got me talking about family law. People come in here for a family law matter, and they don't have any children, for example, and they have a relatively simple divorce, and they believe that they're pretty much in agreement with respect to the allocation of assets and debt. I give them free advice on how they can represent themselves, because I'm thinking, hey, look, I don't think this is something you need an attorney for. I don't think this is good. This is a good move on your part. You have limited assets from the marital estate. You're going to give a certain amount of that marital estate to an attorney on something that I don't really believe you need an attorney for. So if you do this and you do this and you do that, you should be able to go ahead and achieve what it is that you're both looking for. And I'm not speaking to both of them because I'm not giving, you have to be very careful with respect to conflicts of interest. But I say, look, these are different things that you should do. And when you guys do this, when you go sit down with her, with him, and you go through all these different things, you can get some general forms from the library, from the law library in the basement of this courthouse, or you can go to the second floor over this courthouse, and they have general forms, and they'll make copies. You can basically fill in the blanks. You can go online to this particular place, that particular place, and you can fill in the blanks. I like giving people free advice on things that I don't truly believe that they need an attorney for.
That could have been easy money.
Yeah, it could have been easy money. Very, very easy money. Same thing with corporations. You talk about entrepreneurs, and I shouldn't be saying this. I'm really opening up quite a bit. I have no idea why the hell I'm actually doing this right now, because it's just exposing myself. But as a general rule, people around here, they ask questions about, hey, thinking about starting up a business. I want to start up this. I want to start up an LLC, or I want to start up a corporation. I'm like, well, why do you want to start? First off, why did you choose a corporation or an LLC? What do you understand to be the significance of this? And I'll ask them some questions. And then, if in fact they say, yeah, well, here's, I get past that and I just really want to incorporate. I help people incorporate all the time for free. Attorneys charge like $1,000, $1,500 to go ahead and incorporate somebody. It's a very simple process. It's not all that difficult.
You can find it all
and
online.
You
can find it all online.
Yeah, but people don't know where to find it online, or they don't want to take out the time, or they don't want to take a chance that they're not doing it properly, or they don't truly understand the significance of some of the things that they're actually having to fill in for the during the process. And then the same thing with the EIN or FEIN. Some people want to say it's the same thing. It's show people how they can go about doing that and help them to get their
awesome.
EIN number, just because I want to contribute. I like the idea that people want to get out there and they want to be in business. I think that's our country is founded upon that. It really, truly is. We would not be the country we are but for the MAPA, the independents, the people that are, the small businesses that we have. So I'm a big fan of small business, and I think that a lot of it, like I said, if you're going to be in business, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you obviously have to understand your craft, but you have to understand the significance of understand your target market, understand the significance of good relationships and goodwill, because at the very end of the day, goodwill is what it's all about. You're establishing you have to have a certain amount of goodwill, and you can't easily assess or put a price tag on goodwill. It comes from building and nurturing relationships with your customer, in this particular instance with your client, and a focus on what it is that your client is really, or customer is really looking for. And if you genuinely care, I think that they're going to recognize that genuine aspect of the relationship that you're gonna have with them, that you're gonna share with them. And then when it comes time for other people that they know to need somebody to want to buy the widgets that you're selling, or to want to, in my case, to want to to need legal assistance, they're going to refer them over here, and they're going to know because I've given them advice on how to do this stuff for free. And there's just a lot of truth to being a good person and treating people a particular way.
Absolutely. To segue into, like, you were talking about emotional toll. How do you prep yourself for the emotional toll with criminal defense? And I know you.
In what respect?
If they were to confide in you, and do you ever find yourself at crossroads between what's best for society and versus your client?
Yes, I mean, not as, I wouldn't define it as such that way necessarily, but yes, the answer is yes, I do. And when I have those types of cases, when I have those types of matters, or I'm looking in and I'm saying certain things, and I feel like I can't be emotionally invested, because of what I know, or because of certain, if there's something which I think is going to preclude my full attention and energy to a particular case, if I think there's something that's gonna in some way compromise my client by my own personal feelings on that as it pertains to that case or those charges, and not necessarily the charges, because that's very important to understand. People get charged with a number of different things. I have to feel a particular way about the case and about my client to get involved in certain cases. Like you have even with a shooting where it's not self-defense, for example. People are like, oh, you're representing this person. He just shot this person, or he just did this, or he did that. Well, you have to understand that I know a story, a version of what occurred that the general public doesn't know. So, there's often a background, especially when you're dealing with a shooting, even if it's not a self-defense matter. There's often a background. Actually, there's usually a background. It's very often that self-defense matters very often don't even have, they don't necessarily have a background. It could be something that just really just happened. You just met this person, or you just started interacting with this person. Something led to one thing, which led to another, and now you're having to defend yourself. There are a lot of people that have their houses broken into, for example, or they're getting carjacked, or whatever situation might be. So they don't actually have any relationship. In many of the self-defense cases, they don't have any real, prior dealings with this individual. But generally speaking, with gun violence cases, there's a story behind what happened, and there are different lifestyles, and there are different situations when, and taken in the aggregate, when you look at everything in totality, and the larger picture, so to speak, you start to understand what the heck is actually going on with the situation. And the more of an understanding you have, sometimes the more you can be like, okay, I disagree with the way that this was. I disagree with, I think the client may have exercised poor judgment on this particular matter, but at the same time, I can understand what the heck is actually happening here. And it's difficult for me to. I know I'm speaking in ambiguity. I'm speaking in very vague terms, but it's difficult for me to give too much definition without actually giving an example. But you have to understand there's a backdrop. There's some sort of story behind the story. And the news never covers the story behind the story. The general public never hears of the story behind a story unless they actually appear at a trial and learn of actually what's going on. But generally speaking, there's this background, and a lot of times, when I'm listening to the background and I'm understanding the background, and I'm understanding the nature of what occurred and how it occurred and why it occurred, it doesn't in any way preclude me. It doesn't in any way prevent me from representing a person. But in the situation, the circumstance, and the incident where it does, I will reject cases. I reject cases. I just say, I unfortunately, I don't believe I can be, I don't believe I can represent you to the best of my abilities. I think that there are certain issues with this case that are going to prevent me from doing that.
So I'm ignorant to this, but so is the last resort a public defender?
Well, generally speaking, I mean, anybody can have the public defender represent him or her if they could show that they just don't have the financial wherewithal, or they're not.
Okay.
Some people have to have in certain circumstances, have to have a private attorney, but nobody is going to be forced to represent him or herself. So ultimately, a lot of this falls back on the public defender, and there's a lot misunderstood when it comes to public defenders in general. There are some great attorneys in the public defender's office. There are some great attorneys in public. And generally people are like, oh, I wouldn't trust a public defender with my life or anything like that. And what you have to understand is very often public defenders, there's limited resources on what you can do. You don't have your own personal office. You don't have your own personal space. You don't have the ability to allocate your time to choose how many cases you're going to have. For example, like Cook County is it's got an overwhelming amount of cases. So, if you're a public defender and a whole bunch of cases are pushed in your direction, you have to take all these different files. It's very difficult to allocate the time necessary to effectively provide the level of representation that you would like to be able to provide sometimes as a public defender. And sometimes your hands are tied. And some of these public defenders have a tremendous amount of experience in fighting for their clients. And it's sad that so many of them get, a bad name generally because the stereotype of what a public defender is. Because you've got, I've coming up, myself as an attorney, I've gone to public defenders to different friends that I have in a public defender's office, acquaintances, and I've asked, hey, have you ever had this type of case? What would you do here? Or what do you know about this judge with respect to this particular issue? And I've picked the brains of some of these public defenders, and it's been very helpful because they do have a really good grasp on these different things. So I remember for years when I was really just trying to get acclimated, when I was just really trying to understand this stuff, and something you should also know as attorneys, we never have 100% all the answers. So there's still things to this day that from time to time I'm like, I've never dealt with this particular issue. I want to go ahead and ask somebody else, and I'll ask other colleagues, or some are in private practice, some are in government practice, and sometimes even state's attorneys that that I have good relationships with. I'll ask to go ahead and get some, because you can't ever put yourself out there as being all-knowing, and especially in this profession, you have to recognize that there's always a learning curve, that there's always room to learn more about your trade and about how you're practicing, and there's always room for improvement in that respect. But it's sad that so many public defenders get a bad rep for just being in an office, for being associated with this particular label of being a public defender. Some of these people legitimately just want to provide a service that they legitimately get into the public defender's office because they want to help people that can't afford to help themselves, and they want to be able to provide a certain quality, a certain level of representation, and you've got some of them that are just very, very, very good at what they do, and they're certainly able to do that. But again, there's certain negative negative feelings towards that term, towards the public defender.
Kind of like you get what you pay for, in a way.
Yeah, and I believe, I'm a big believer in you get what you pay for. But when you're in government, when you're in a government office and you're doing this and you're wanting to provide this service, there's a difference. I very much in the private practice, I'm very much a big fan of you get what you pay for. I mean, if you're dealing with a very substantial charge and somebody's charging you a fraction of what they should be charging, you have to kind of question why is it that they're charging you this. You're dealing with something that could alter your life, that could change your future, your liberties, your freedom, your everything, your family, everything. Some of these cases can alter people's lives in so many different ways, and so many other people that are connected to these people, their lives as well. So I'm a big fan if you get what you pay for in a private sector, but I don't think that that's always a true indicator with respect to the respect to the public sector, with respect to people that really want to make a difference, either in the prosecution area of law or in the defense area of law. I just don't think it's a fair assessment. Those people's
if you
respective talents.
The money's in the private practice.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
And a lot of people forego that to get in the because they want to have a lot of exposure and they want to help a lot of people and they want to be able to provide that. I mean, as a general rule, that's not probably the main reason. It's difficult to get a job out of law school, which a lot of people that are in law school don't understand. It's very difficult to get a job out of law school. So a lot of people are like, yeah, I want to be a lawyer, but they don't really truly understand, okay, what is it like to put a shingle up, for example? What is it like to start your own business? What is it like to work for other people that might not share your perspective or your views on various different in the areas of law that you're working for them, but you don't really have a choice because that's the only way you're going to get paid. What are you going to do when you get done with all that college that you have? Many people have debt that they've accumulated, and you get done with all that law school. And again, many people have even more substantial debt from law school that they've accumulated. What are you going to do now? Okay, you're a lawyer. What does that mean? So it's an eye-opening experience when you've had so much attention, so much focus on college and law school and the bar exam, and now you have to, for the very first time, open your eyes to something else, which is what am I going to do with this
you're
education?
Free. You're on your own.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not the feeling of freedom.
No, definitely
doesn't feel that way at all.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
Cool. Have you you've been following the George Floyd trial?
Mm-mm.
Not really. It seems like it's clear cut.
I'm going to tell you right now, it's I've not been following it, so I can't comment on it. I'm very reluctant to watch news version of what's happening. I'm not sitting here preaching fake news. I'm not saying that for that reason. I'm just saying that it's very rare that the media has a true understanding of the legal significance of what's occurring. And you know this because they invite different attorneys onto their shows to go ahead and speak on these particular issues because they don't really understand it. And I've been on the news for different cases. I've been on every major news channel out here before for representing for certain matters. And even when I'm talking to these different individuals, and I feel a particular way about what's been said, there's still a way that they perceive it, and you can tell from the way that it shows. And I'm not necessarily saying that's a negative thing. It's just that what they may believe to be relevant, I might not believe to be relevant, and what they believe to be irrelevant, I might believe conversely that it's extremely important that the general public understands and knows that. And then you've got the significance of laws and how laws are applied to different scenarios. I mean, it's a blurred line in certain respects because it's against the law to practice law without a license. You're not allowed to practice law. You're not allowed to give legal advice or any of those things without a law license, without having your law license, without being an attorney. But the news seems to suggest certain legal standards and conclusions and what should and shouldn't be done in certain circumstances. And that's why I say it's a bit of a blurred line. I think sometimes they go a little bit too far with it, with what they're doing. So I didn't have any interest in seeing and actually
I've only seen
watching what
people
happened
on the stand. I haven't watched the news in general.
I didn't even have any interest in watching what happened to Mr. Floyd. It's disgusting that not to speak on whether there's what actually happened, but it's just disgusting the overall idea of just watching somebody's life taken or somebody's life shortened by what's happening. I'm not saying that's not to say anything with respect to whether whether something was right or wrong. It's just to say I just don't have any interest in watching somebody die or somebody be put in a situation where they're dying.
I wonder why do body cam footage shut off at certain points?
That's an issue. That's a real issue.
Okay.
That's a real issue, and I don't know to the extent that might be something in that case that could be a serious issue. It certainly does happen where body cam is accidentally turned off or it's accidentally activated. It certainly happens. You have very high stress situations, and to expect that these police their attention is going to be on turning on their camera or turning off their camera at all times when they're approaching very serious situations is I think expecting a little too much. I don't think it's fair to the police to do that. But as a general rule, you're trained to do this. So as a general rule, you're supposed to cut the BWC, to cut the body worn camera on, to cut it off, and understand that. But that said, you get involved in situations as a human that no matter how much training you have, your attention is on this particular situation, and you're maybe concerned for your safety, or you're concerned for somebody else's safety. And so it does happen where the camera's not turned on, or it's turned off when it shouldn't be. So accidents happen. But as a general rule, there are certain consequences, procedural consequences, when video footage is missing or is cut short. There are certain ways to keep certain evidence out as far as a defense, from a defense standpoint goes. If that video footage is cut short and the person that's cutting it short is the defendant, then that's a completely different thing. That could also have obvious consequences, which is why I say that could be very significant if in fact that's what's occurred in the George Floyd case. But I stay away from a lot of stuff that's going on in the news. I have cases. If I were to start telling you about some of my cases that are in the news, you'd be like, oh yeah, I heard about that. Oh yeah, I heard about that. But I don't talk about it.
Right.
As a general rule, I mean, it's just not. It's. So I'm not really impressed by a lot of what's pushed in the media. I'm not attracted to it. I'm not attracted to negative. I think that we spend a lot of time focused on negative. I think that if you've got somebody that just took a lot of people's lives and just killed a bunch of people, and you spend hours and then days and then weeks talking about this person and what was wrong with this person mentally. We're not in school of psychology, so as a general rule, the majority of the public doesn't need to try to understand the psychology of this nut. I think what's happening is you're promoting the act itself. You're promoting the crime itself, and you're giving a lot of attention to this. And people have the need for attention. And you see a lot of people committing copycat crimes over and over and over again, doing they just saw something. I mean, you're not that old. I'm not going to ask you how old you are.
31.
Perfect. I'm a little bit older than that. My oldest child is just slightly younger than you right now. So for me, when I was younger, watching the news, it was a big deal. Like, so-and-so just killed so-and-so. Two totally different strangers, but it's like, oh my gosh, this person just killed this person. That was, what's needed to, and we're way off topic now, so we should just cut these cameras, just been talking and having a couple of drinks. But what's needed is for purposes of drawing attention, it's like these different news outlets, it's like they're in competition to grab attention. The biggest, ugliest stories out there. And the shock value, getting back to what I was saying, the shock value, what's needed to rise to the level of something being shocking is really severe. Like, you hear somebody went into his job and he shot a couple of people, and you're like, yeah, I just heard that last week. And, once upon a time, that was very significant. It was very, very huge. It was very, wow, that had a serious wow factor. And now it's just like, yeah, another one of these. So now it comes down to how outrageous does it have to be to really garner, to really grab the attention of all these, of the people that are watching this particular news outlet or listening to it, and it's like a constant competition. And I think a lot of this would change, because I think we're feeding into the people that have these psychological issues, because I don't think anybody that's ever doing this is psychologically right. We're all a bit off. All of us are a bit off, at least the way I perceive it. I know I'm very much a bit off, which makes it a bit more than a bit, but we're all a bit off, right? And so I think that as a general rule, the people that are committing these crimes are more, they have some serious psychological, issues, mental, emotional, psychological issues, driven issues that bring them to a point where they can either justify this or justify doing something that they would not otherwise be able to justify. And I think when you put this on the news, and you spend days talking about this, trying to understand, well, we found this in this person's bedroom, and we also found this, and the parents and the neighbors say this, and family and the workers, the coworkers say this. Well, you know what? You just had 10 people that were killed by this guy. Why don't you say somebody with some serious psychological issues just went out and did something really horrible today, and as a result, 10 people died, and we want to focus on the 10 people that died. This person, everybody that died is a father or a mother or a brother or a sister or a child of somebody or a role model or something. Everybody's got some sort of story, and we gloss over. We talk about the fact these people died, and we maybe put their pictures up, or maybe even put some brief title that's associated with this person. This person is a off-duty police officer. This person is a school teacher. But it's just very general, and it's very quick, and then it's done. And then the whole focus is on the nut job that went ahead and I'm oversimplifying things, and I shouldn't be throwing names out. But the individual that did that committed this horrible act, this horrible crime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And we just focus on that, and it just draws so much attention. So getting back to what I was saying moments ago, I just don't like watching. I don't like watching the news. I just don't like. I don't like all the negative. I just and if it was all positive news, nobody'd watch that, because people just want to see the car accident. They just want to stop traffic and check and see what how bad the accident was, and does it appear that somebody got injured. It just slows traffic. It slows life down. Watching all this negative stuff, and I just don't like doing it.
Okay. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, unfortunately. Here's another dilemma. I recently learned that cops can't pursue.
Well, that's a big thing. If you're talking about
that's been a thing?
Cars, yeah, it's a big thing.
Oh, but
Yeah,
it's been a thing?
Yes, it has.
Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah. It's been a thing for some jurisdictions. It's been a thing for a while, but it's certainly been a thing for years now. It's not a new thing where you can't follow them, because people have died. See, people have died in these high-speed chases, it brought a bunch of lawsuits, and then it really, a lot of people grew. A lot of people were very concerned about the significance of these high-speed chases in residential areas, for example. Highly populated areas, and the fact that there's no distinction being made. And so one thing led to another, and there's just this overprotection, this overreaching protection for other people. And I say overreaching, which isn't necessarily fair to characterize it that way. But there's no balance of reality in what we're dealing with, and we've got more carjackings than ever before.
That's how I heard
and
about
it. These cars are being used to commit other crimes. They're being used to go shoot at other people, to do a whole number of different, like, smash and grabs. You know what smash and grab is? Yeah, these cars are being used for a whole ton of different things, and the police are only allowed to pursue the vehicle at a certain speed, and once it gets beyond a certain speed, and it changes from jurisdictions what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. But once they're no longer allowed to pursue, they just got to cut they got to cut the line, cut the fish loose, and the fish just swims away and eats other fish and does whatever the heck it's going to do. It's an issue. It's a balancing act, and that's why I have so much concern about another thing that the news spins, which is this whole police brutality thing, police violating people's rights. Understand this. I understand that happens. 100% understand that. I'm a South Side. I've always been. Granted, these are South suburbs, but I'm still like, this is Chicago's South Side. It's not a, it's a continuation of Chicago's South Side. These South suburbs, and there's a lot that happens in these immediate South suburbs out here, and And I see a lot happening. I'm very well aware of what's happening. I'm very familiar with these streets. I'm very familiar with what happens out here. And I have a lot of traffic. I have a lot of noise. I have a lot of, I'm not going to call it gossip, but I have a lot of insight into what's happening out here through the different connections that I have doing what I do and for as long as I've done it. And I think that, with this police issue, I think we're taking it to a whole other level.
To an extreme.
Yes, to a whole other level that it shouldn't be taken to. You've got so many people that risk their lives to protect us every freaking day. I mean, there's some really bad areas where police put on their uniform and in certain areas put on their bulletproof vest on a daily basis to go ahead and help to protect, to be able to give us some security in what would otherwise be a very unsecure, unstable environment. And to paint a picture that all police are bad, and I know that's not the picture that's being painted, but that's what is being deduced. That's what people. That's the general feeling or opinion of so many people that are right now anti-police. And I think that it's horrible. It's just really, really sad. I mean, what would happen if all these police one day said, I'm on strike. I'm on strike. You don't like it. You don't like what I'm doing, or you don't like what we're doing, or you don't like the fact that I'm a police officer. I'm not showing up to work today.
Call 911. No one shows up.
So now all the different people that are saying, hey, these police are way out of control and this shouldn't happen. Now what happens if somebody's robbing your house or attacking you or pulling out a gun on you? Who are you going to call? I mean, this is not the situation that we want to be in. This is not, and unfortunately, there's so much going on right now in this world, and we need police. We need good police, but we need police more than ever. I mean, and to go ahead and put a label on police because there are some people that within these departments that have committed acts which are very wholly wrong on multiple levels. I get that. They've violated people's rights. I get that. But that's not the general police mentality. So you are in effect you're prejudging. This is a serious prejudice. You're prejudging, and I think it's so unfortunate, it's so sad that this is happening because you've got so many good police, and to go ahead and label police as a whole based off of the actions or of one or a few. And I'm not saying that that there are only a few people in the United States that are police officers that have committed some of these horrible acts, but as a general rule, it's not the general police population that's acting this way. Mm-mm. So I think it's ignorant to go ahead and label every one of them this way because you're familiar with this story or that story.
Yeah, I think people hold them to a higher standard.
I get it, but you know what? They're people. I mean, they're people, and they're people that chose, and some of them for all the right reasons chose to go ahead and become a police officer so they could protect the general public. I mean, you can't just discount that. It's not. If somebody said, how much would somebody have to pay you to say, hey, I'm going to give you a gun and I'm going to give you a car to drive around in, and I'm going to give you a bulletproof vest, and you got to go ahead and protect all these different people, and you have to go into hostile situations, and you have to where you could potentially get killed or shot at. I mean, how much would you require as payment? What would be a sufficient amount? Because Vic, a lot of people are going to say, I'll pass. I'm sorry. I really appreciate the fact that this is a job that needs to be filled, and I really appreciate the fact that this job exists, but I'm not interested. So you've got some people that genuinely are interested for that reason, and just with any profession, as I said earlier, there's a certain learning curve. So you've as a police officer, you can take whatever training you want, but you get in certain situations, and you're confronted with these situations, and you have to act in a matter of seconds and sometimes a millisecond And you have to make these decisions, and they could potentially affect you, the rest of your life, and affect other people, and it's not always fair. And I say this understanding that some of these things are not things or decisions that are made in seconds, or they're decisions that nobody could really understand why somebody would have done what was done. But you have many of these situations to exist where you're making a decision and that fast that has to be made, and you're hoping you're making the right decision, but it's not always the right decision. And I think that we tend to label and group people very quickly based on based on other people's actions and based on what we understand the situation to be. And that's one thing about my profession, is that the whole opportunity to actually have a trial, to stand trial, you have the absolute right to proceed to trial. As a defendant, you have the absolute right to say, hey, prove it. You have the absolute rights to be confronted by your accusers. You have the absolute right to cross-examine those accusers. You have the absolute right to have the state, put on their evidence, because that's a quintessential, constitutional right. But yet, the general public doesn't have. They're passing judgment without a trial on a person based off of the limited information that they know, and sometimes that information is not even correct. And then they're passing judgment on other people that happen to be associated with the people, whether those people were right or wrong. So I just think that it's overkill. It's depressing.
I think the phrase hate crime has been thrown around very frivolously recently, and I had to stop. I was like, I don't know if that was a hate crime. Like until you hear like maybe racial slurs being thrown around, but maybe it was just unfortunate that this old Asian person was at the wrong place at the wrong time, and this person who would have probably kicked anyone down just happened to kick an Asian person during these anti-Asian, uptick.
And people are getting it and they're running with it, and sometimes it really truly is a hate crime, and sometimes it's not, and it's just it's unfortunate because we're so quick to...
Things can go viral so fast.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right?
100%. And you never know which things are going to go viral.
You share before you read, before you contextualize things. Yeah. So the last thing I wanted to hop off, I don't know how long we've been, maybe...
Probably about 8 hours.
Yeah,
I can't read that thing.
2 hours.
Okay,
so last thing. We kind of talked about this before rolling. But the bringing jurors back, how's that process been?
Okay, so as I told you, which is why you're probably... My phone can only vibrate so many times before it falls off the Pac-Man machine, apparently.
What was it like during the pandemic?
Okay, so I was describing the pandemic. You basically, they put a halt, to all hearings and all trials for a while. Then they gradually started allowing hearings through Zoom.
Okay.
And clients have to waive the right to be present in person for those hearings, because you have the absolute right to be, confronted by your accusers, for example. So if in fact it relates to a criminal defense matter rather, you have the absolute right to be confronted by your accuser, to be in the courtroom, to be able to see these people, to be in their presence, to be able to do that. So that's very... It's very interesting. A lot of people would waive their rights to doing these hearings in person, and then they would be able to proceed by Zoom on hearings, or relatively I'm not gonna say insignificant trials, but charges that are not as severe as other charges. So like smaller charged offenses. They were gradually starting to do some of those trials on Zoom if in fact the defense were waiving. And this is for Cook County, by the way. These counties, like Will County, for example, you go to Will County, it's like COVID what? I mean, I was there right in the in the heart of like COVID times in Will County, and other attorneys that practice in Will and will tell you the same thing, where they're just completely, it's depending on what you're there for, especially the felony cases, they were completely open. So you had a whole bunch of people in these. No, they did take measures to help ensure safety. But still, there's a good number of people that were in that building. And then you had other buildings that are, within how many minutes away, completely closed down. We will not even be opening up the building at all. You had so within Cook County itself, you had different Cook County courthouses themselves that were changing up how they were doing it. Bridgeview, I think, at one point had 2 judges that were and I could be wrong, but this is what I was told. 2 judges that both had contracted COVID, so they just closed. I mean, that obviously had a significant effect on the courthouse. Markham had some people within the courthouse that were. It seemed like COVID was spreading within the courthouse, so they just shut down. You had, for a while, you had the judges you had it so the judges were not even in the courthouse. And then you had just a couple judges in the courthouse that were in their courtrooms, but nobody's allowed to enter the courtroom. There's so many different levels of what's transpired, how this is, because it's basically like baby steps, right? You're not familiar with, you don't have the answers.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody ever anticipated this. Well, the general public certainly didn't anticipate this. So you don't have any, handbook on what you can, what you should and shouldn't do. So it's a lot of trial and error. I guess appropriately, those words appropriately used since we're talking about law. It's a lot of there's a lot of trial and error to be able to graduate, these different levels of trying to get closer and closer back to some sort of normalcy.
Yeah.
And I just recently, my firm had the very first jury trial in any. We just had a very first criminal jury trial in any of the suburban Cook County courthouses, and we had the second criminal jury trial in all of Cook County. And my guess is, since we're doing criminal jury trials, that I don't think they've even had any civil jury trials, because they've been so reluctant to do a jury trial. I can't imagine that they would have done any civil trials. So I think it's safe to say that we had the second jury trial period in all of Cook County, and the first jury trial in any of the suburban outlying districts of Cook County. And it was very interesting. And the reason is because they had to give so much thought to what they were going to do to try to make people safe and to feel safe under these circumstances. First off, let's just start with the jury summons. I mean, you have to you're mailing out, hundreds of jury summons and hoping that,
that
40, 50, 60 people make it to the courthouse.
Yeah.
And then what are you going to do as far as a form of punishing those people that, or in some way having some sort of consequence to those people that don't appear for jury service when they personally don't feel safe doing this. And nobody's explaining to the jurors what jury service is going to consist of. Or at least I don't know of anybody that's explained that to the jurors. And even if it is in the letter, hey, look, we're going to do different things to kind of safeguard, to kind of make sure that you're going to be fine. I don't think that jurors are even going to be looking at that so much as they're going to be thinking, okay, hold on a second, I'm showing up where, for what? I don't think the $17 and change that they give per day for being in a juror in Cook County, I don't think that's what's attracting people to go to the courthouse. But you obviously have a division of personalities and opinions when it comes to COVID in general. So some people don't really, certain people don't feel nearly as threatened by this, and certain people feel extremely threatened by it. But the question I was just posing a moment ago is, what are you going to do when they don't show up?
Yeah, can you punish them?
I mean, what are you going to do? Like pre-pandemic, there are different things, but what are you going to do right now? Like, they're genuinely scared. They don't want to come to court. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
No, we're forcing you to go to court anyway to preside over this case. So that's difficult. And you know what else is difficult is, like, knowing that certain people are going there even though they don't want to be there. Whose case does that help and whose case does that hurt if people want to get the heck out of there?
Oh, yeah.
That's also something which has to be taken into consideration. And then you also have how they're conducting the trial itself. So what was just done, and these other suburban courthouses were watching to see what was happening. We had our jury trial in Bridgeview Courthouse, which is the 5th district of Cook County. But all these other districts were watching to see what happens. And what was just done, people can't come. You can't have like a general audience. Like the general public can go in and watch these jury trials. they don't want the general public in the courtroom watching a jury trial because it's that many more people in the courtroom. So what they did is, and I thought it was very clever, they took a good portion of the basement, this huge room in their basement, and they made it into like a jury viewing room so people could watch the trial. Then in the courtroom itself, they put a camera on whoever was going to be asking the questions, who the witness was, and the judge. So there's going to be a camera on the witness, that whatever witness is testifying, the individual asking the questions, whatever attorney is asking the questions, and the judge. No camera on the jury for obvious, well, not necessarily obvious to the general public, but no camera on the jury. And so that people that want to see their family member on trial or they're invested in this trial, emotionally for whatever reason, they can observe it from a different room. Well, then that led to an interesting question because, we usually bring a motion exclude, and then both sides will join in the motion exclude. And what that means is you're bringing a motion, you're asking the court to exclude any witnesses that can be testifying from the courtroom. So say, for example, there are 3 police that are going to be testifying. As a defense attorney, we don't want the police officers sitting in the room listening to each other testify, so they can all make sure that they testify the exact same way. Instead, if they all witnessed it, if they all observed it, if they're all involved, they should be able to testify differently and all have the same type of testimony anyway. So, we don't want all the police in there, so we bring a motion to exclude. The state doesn't want us to be able to have our witnesses hearing what each other are saying, so they can also testify similarly, so they'll join in the motion to exclude as well. Well, since you're recording this and it's being shown in another room, how do you know that the people that have been excluded aren't watching it?
Yeah.
And then there's an argument that's been made, well, can't we just watch this, if it's going to be recorded, can we watch this like on a YouTube channel or something? Well, that's going to be very difficult to be able to regulate who is and isn't watching it. So yes, there's an order out there saying that you're not allowed to watch this. The witnesses are not allowed to watch this as other witnesses testify, but it's not necessarily the most comforting feeling to the defendant knowing that this is being aired somewhere else in the courthouse or wherever it might be. So that's also very different. What I found difficult for me personally is, as I'm shifting in this chair, is sitting still, standing still, rather, when I'm asking questions. And the reason I have to stand still is because, for one, the court reporter's on the other side of this plexiglass, so I'm supposed to be speaking in front of the microphone that's at this podium, even though my voice generally just makes its way around the courtroom because I'm generally a bit animated when I'm on a jury trial. Sometimes maybe too much. Again, I'm seeing a counselor for that. So I have issues. But what I'm saying is you have to keep your voice up loud enough for the court reporter to hear it, generally pre-pandemic, meaning, hey, make sure the court reporter can hear you. But during this pandemic, I was going to say post-pandemic, we're still in it. But during this right now, during our current status here, during our current state, you have to speak in the microphone because otherwise it's very difficult for this court reporter to hear you. And that's very difficult to stand still in a particular area. And also I think to be an effective lawyer, very often you have to have you should be able to roam
the room.
The room.
Yeah.
Sometimes I want to put a certain questions I want to be asking the witness, but looking at the jury while I'm asking the witness so I can see the faces of these jurors when this witness is testifying a way that I know this witness is going to have to testify, which I think is going to be like a wow factor for my case, and I want to be able to see the jury. Well, the jury is not all sitting in the pew in the jury box. They're sitting in the pews too. So now the jury box, which typically seats 12 or 14 people.
Oh, they spread them out.
They have to spread them out. So they're sitting in the pews. So they're sitting where people that would typically be in the courtroom watching the case are sitting. So they've got them spread out. So I also can't necessarily see all the different jurors. And because we're sitting with plexiglass dividing each one of us, I can't even see them. When I'm sitting down, I can't even see all of them. So there's a lot that has to be considered. And I really give a lot of credit to the administration, to all the different people that played a role in coming up with how to do this in the way that at least affects the rights of the accused, in the way that it's most beneficial to everybody involved, because it's a very difficult problem to address. How are you going to go forward with this? How are you going to reopen the courts? How are you going to be able to get reintroduce jury trials back into our way of our typical daily judicial process, because they're very important for the reasons we discussed earlier. Otherwise people just be sitting in jail indefinitely waiting for a trial. If in fact they want a jury trial, they're just be sitting there for no set time until they're able to proceed with their trial, and till there's a decision to be made.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very discriminatory to continue on without having any set of rules with respect to these people that are in jail, that don't have a choice but to be there while their case is pending.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very interesting. And the last thing I wanted to say about it is that one other thing that I wanted to comment on that I thought was also very interesting what they did. They had clear masks that they gave out. So
you can read lips, or?
Yeah, so you could see this whole thing was all clear plastic.
Oh.
And there was, so they gave up for the
like
one. I had never seen it either, and I thought it was genius. Whoever came up with it, I thought it was genius. And I thought it was really, like I said, I was very impressed with the way that the court administration, the presiding judge was really very determined to make sure that this was done in as fair a setting as possible. The judge that was presiding over the case was very aware of the significance of what we were dealing with, and he was also he was also very careful to make sure that people felt like they were that everything was going in a positive direction as best as possible to accommodate everybody's respective wishes of what they wanted to be able to do, how they wanted to be able to proceed with the trial. So it was very interesting. It was very, very interesting because, if you didn't have the clear mask, you wouldn't be able to see people's faces. So me talking to you like this, and I'm on, you're on trial, you're the defendant, and I'm talking about a situation, and the jury can't see my face and they can't see what my reactions are. It's very difficult. I love poker, for example, and a lot of poker players go with their glasses and they put their hoods on. They're trying to hide as much of their face as possible, and in certain respects, there's a certain correlation here as far as just how the significance of that and how it plays a role in these cases going forward. So I thought it was very well thought out. I was very surprised to see just how well thought out it was. But again, there's still things there's always room for improvement when you're trying to deal with this, because you can't have all these jurors together, so you can't see everybody at the same time. You don't get to see what's going on behind you when you're asking a witness. And as a trial attorney, when I'm doing jury trials, I really want to be able to know whose attention I've grabbed on certain points. So that was a bit difficult, but overall I think it was a really good it was a positive experience.
Wow.
Helps that we got our not guilty, but it's a positive experience.
All right.
Yeah.
I guess one last question. It's like how do you decide on your jurors?
Oh, it's a great question. I don't know that I don't.
Who are you looking at? Like
you have to understand
is it very case dependent? It's like depending.
Yes, there's a certain amount of it that's case dependent. That has quite a bit to do with what the actual charges are.
Okay.
Sometimes you want women over men. Sometimes you want older jurors over younger jurors, and there are different reasons for that. And it's all a certain amount of it's you could attribute to experience in trying cases in front of juries and just knowing how certain people generally perceive certain things. Some of it you can attribute to just common sense or personal experiences dealing with different people and how they perceive this. Sometimes it could be something just based on where somebody lives, where their actual residence is, because they'll ask where these people are from. You've got somebody that's from the north suburbs, and you're trying to have them understand the significance of what happened in the south suburbs, the south side. That could be something where I don't really know that I want this person. And a jury is supposed to represent. It's supposed to be 12 members of your peers, so to speak. So it's supposed to be 12 people that represent the community around you, and that's not always the case. If you're a Mexican defendant and you don't see any Mexicans on the jury, you might feel like, hey, how is this supposed to represent my peers?
Sure.
I don't see how this represents my peers. It's not a representative pool of people that can see, can understand my general life, or my what growing up was like in my area, or whatever the case might be. And that's difficult. And you've got something called a peremptory challenge. So depending on what type of case you're sorry, brother,
No, you're good.
Depending on what type of case you're fighting, depending on the significance, the level of the case, or a misdemeanor or felony, and what type of depending on what type of case you're fighting, you have so many peremptory challenges. Peremptory challenges are basically where you could say, I don't want this juror, and not have to give any reason whatsoever why you don't want the juror.
Say it slower. Peremptory?
Peremptory.
Peremptory.
Yes.
Peremptory. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. Actually, I missay it. It's preemptory.
Preemptory. Oh,
Preemptory
I've never heard of it,
challenges.
so okay. It's very interesting.
And so you have so many peremptory challenges where you could just say, hey, I don't want this person presiding over my trial, and you don't have to give any reason. So that's pretty significant. So if your client leans over and says, I don't like the way this person's looking at me, that's good enough.
Oh,
challenge.
gotcha. Okay, gotcha.
So
cool. That helps.
yeah,
That's
and then
helpful.
you have so many challenges for cause. If somebody cannot be impartial based on the questions that were asked, it's called voir dire. Voir dire is jury selection. If somebody cannot be impartial during the questioning of the juror, that specific juror, they raise certain things in their answers which lead you to believe that they can't be fair and impartial, then you could potentially have them dismissed or removed for cause without actually having to use one of your challenges.
So you have a limited number of challenges.
Yes, that's what I said. Depending on what type of case and everything else, you have a limited number of challenges.
Gotcha.
So, so that obviously plays a role there as well.
How often do jurors try to fake it to try to get out of jury duty?
Very often.
Oh, very often.
Yeah, very often. Very often. It's definitely not the norm. The majority of people don't do it, but
No,
I mean,
yeah.
it happens often enough.
Oh.
Yeah.
Do you make them still like sit or like? do
Well,
you just-
depending on what they're saying,
Oh, okay.
there's a number of different things that that the state's like, I'm not buying that, or the defense like, I'm not buying that. So. And it's some of those people you almost want to make them stay there just because they're just so full of it. But yeah, so you get to remove them for cause, which is unlimited. If you have cause objections where you can show that they can't be fair and impartial, and to the satisfaction of the court, and the court also agrees with you that they can't be fair and impartial based on their answers, you can remove as many people as you want.
Gotcha.
That can't be there for those reasons. But you have somebody that you get to discard just for whatever reason.
Okay. Wow. Dave,
Cool.
thank you so much.
Yes,
That was a lot.
absolutely. I was
Thanks.
thinking I was going to probably have to. That bed's not that couch is not a fold out.
Oh, yeah.
So I was just wondering what the heck,
Sun's
It's good,
going
the sun, yeah,
down.
the sun's going down. But in fairness, the sun was never out today, which is what we were talking about in the very beginning. But it has stopped raining, then started raining, and then stopped raining, and started raining several times. So we've passed certain weather.
Thanks for
elements.
helping me navigate some of these difficult conversations.
I was helping you.
Yeah.
Good. I thought I was just talking, just not breathing. I thought a couple times I was just like, "Well, what am I just saying?" I just keep on talking here. So I expected to look over and you say, "Shut up, time."
Yeah, keep up the good work. There's
Thanks,
nothing
brother.
much more. You're
Thanks.
doing great work.
Thank you.
The people's champ in a way, It's just like the people that people can count on.
Never had that title, but it's a fun title. But no, I we fight really hard. So we like I said, we enjoy what we do, which I think helps quite a bit. We enjoy what we do. We enjoy representing our clients and fighting for our clients.
And
So.
where can people find you?
In what respect, Vic? Right here in this Homewood office. I'm generally here in this
2001
home office.
South
2001 Ridge Road,
Ridge
Homewood,
Road.
Illinois. But as
Yeah.
far as online, we have McDermottwins.com. I like saying that. I could say that a few different times. McDermottwins.com. We have our McDermott Law Group followings. We have the Facebook. We have TikTok.
Also
which I don't
notyourtypicalattorneys.com.
typically tell people. Yes, we have
Yeah.
notyourtypicalattorneys.com.
TikTok.
We have TikTok. We want to try to make sure that we're
Absolutely.
that we're out there, So we like branding, and TikTok's like I said, it's a very unique type of branding. Instagram, So you're not your typical attorneys generally point you in the general direction. Are we not your typical attorneys on Instagram?
You are.
Okay.
And
And that's what we are on
also
TikTok
the
as well.
website that directs to McDermottwins.com too.
Cool.
So notyourtypicalattorneys.com.
Cool. Yeah, I don't even know all this stuff. But again, it's Jameson. That's the genius behind Jameson. It's not me, guys. It's not me.
It's
It's
the
my
rerouter.
daughter.
Okay, the back door.
It's my daughter.
Well, guys, if you made it this far, thank you. And follow Dave on all the socials and stuff. But I'll see you guys in the next episode. All right. Ciao.
Guys,
Later.
have a nice day.